Chapter 1008. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly when she heard Baisher's curious question. It had only been a short time since Baisher was born. Although his strength had increased very quickly, he had not experienced many battles. Therefore, he could not make a very good judgment about this battle. However, she believed that Baisher would understand after watching the battle in the blood aura field for a period of time. The battle has only just begun. Even if Zheng Zishe has the advantage, the result cannot be determined to be his victory. There are many situations where the result can be reversed. Baisher was still a little dazed when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's answer. Looking at Baisher's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baisher's head and explained. From the current situation, Wang Xiaojun is indeed at a disadvantage. He has been suppressed by Zheng Zishe. However, have you noticed that Zheng Zishe's strength is very strong, but his attacks have not caused much damage to Wang Xiaojun? Moreover, Zheng Zishe has also sensed this. Therefore, he's been fighting more and more frequently and has been using more yuanli. His face is already showing an anxious state. On the other hand, Wang Xiaojun's expression has not changed. Compared to Zheng Zishe, his consumption is very small. Until now, Wang Xiaojun has not found an opportunity to attack. However, once Zheng Zishe has exhausted himself, he will find an opportunity. That will be the moment when the victor will be decided. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flickered with wisdom. The battle situation was as she had expected. Wang Xiaojun's temperament was better. Even though the battle had not ended, she could already judge the result. Baisher finally understood after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation. The confusion in his eyes gradually disappeared. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang finished her explanation, a man appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang. "Miss, this is your first time in the blood aura field, right?" Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at the man standing in front of her. The man was dressed in white, which was the same color as her clothes. The man's long hair was tied up high, revealing a handsome face. The corners of his mouth were curled up with a smile that he thought was elegant, but his eyes were filled with lust and greed. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the man. To be honest, this man's appearance was not bad in the bloody ground abyss, but he wasn't considered handsome outside. At most, he could be considered average. However, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a little helpless at the man's self-proclaimed elegance and coquettishness. "What's the matter?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, her voice cold and distant. Song Mingjie was a little surprised by Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude. However, with Bailey Hongzhuang's beauty, she indeed had the right to put on airs. He endured it. "I am Song Mingjie, and I would like to make friends with you. To be precise, I want you to be my woman." A mocking and complacent smile appeared on Song Mingjie's lips. His eyes impudently sized up Bailey Hongzhuang's body, revealing his lust and filthy intentions. "Fuck! Where did this idiot come from?" Xiao He could not help but curse. This man was simply too disgusting. His words were even more disgusting. "I've seen weirdos, but I've never seen such a weirdo." Xiao Bai clenched her fists as her eyes filled with anger. Chapter 1009. When the people in the stands saw Song Mingjie walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, their eyes lit up with interest, and many of them even whistled. Song Mingjie could be considered to have a certain reputation in the Bloodground Abyss. This reputation was not because of his strength, but because he was a rapist and countless beauties had fallen into his hands. Usually, Song Mingjie would brag about his knowledge and gratitude to different beauties, which also allowed him to make a group of friends who share the same rotten tastes. At this moment, such a beauty had suddenly appeared in the Bloodground Abyss, so they naturally wanted to know if Song Mingjie's trick would work. With Song Mingjie's experience with women, I'm afraid this lady will fall into his hands soon. That's true. Even if this lady doesn't agree, just Song Mingjie's bewitching fragrance will make this woman surrender. There's going to be a show to watch again. After Song Mingjie makes his move, we might be able to take advantage of it. Some of the women looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes filled with jealousy and dissatisfaction. Bailey Hongzhuang had stolen their limelight as soon as she arrived, so they naturally wished that Bailey Hongzhuang would fall into Song Mingjie's hands. Compared to what Song Mingjie had done, the battle between the two of them in the ring was not so important. Looking at Song Mingjie, who was in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were filled with disgust and disdain. Scram. Speaking another word to a shameless person like Song Mingjie was a waste of time. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Song Mingjie did not show any displeasure. On the contrary, the smile on his face became even brighter. As a rapist, he had long been used to such rejection. The more severe the rejection, the more he would feel when she finally fell into his hands. Beauty, don't be so ruthless. Song Mingjie was full of smiles. I've always been very patient with beauties like you. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile, but her words became even colder. I've never been interested in scum like you. Scum. Song Mingjie frowned. Then he smiled and said, That's right. I am scum. However, I will make you fall in love with me. Scram. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was covered with frost, and she no longer had any patience to talk to Song Mingjie. Against such a shameless person, any verbal attack would be meaningless. If it weren't for the fact that fighting was prohibited in the Blood Chi Tower, she would have already killed this loathsome scum. Don't make me say it a third time. Bailey Hongzhuang's cold words were full of threat and murderous intent. Her voice was resolute, her clear eyes blooming with a dazzling brilliance. A fierce and resolute aura filled the air. Song Mingjie wanted to continue teasing Bailey Hongzhuang, but when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's icy cold eyes, he couldn't help but swallow his words. A trace of shock appeared in his heart. It was hard to imagine that such a young girl could have such a terrifying aura. It was really amazing. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang's family background was more powerful than they had imagined. However, the more he felt that her background was not simple, the more interested he was. In any case, in the Bloodground Abyss, no force could openly deal with him. Chapter 1010. You really have a personality. It doesn't matter if you don't like me now. You'll like me at night. Song Mingjie smiled meaningfully and winked at Bailey Hongzhuang before leaving confidently. When everyone saw Song Mingjie come back like this, they chuckled and sighed. Song Mingjie, I didn't expect you to not be able to handle her. That's right. You were bragging to us before that there was no woman you couldn't handle. Now you can't handle her? Song Mingjie glanced at the crowd and said, This is the blood aura field. You can't fight. Women like men with strength. You know that. As Song Mingjie's voice fell, everyone present immediately understood and smiled knowingly. So that's how it is. Song Mingjie had always dealt with women at night. It seemed that this new girl would not be able to escape tonight's disaster. Facing everyone's sizing up, Bailey Hongzhuang was indifferent. She naturally understood what Song Mingjie meant. However, as long as Song Mingjie dared to come tonight, she did not mind sending Song Mingjie to see the King of Hell. Verbal ridicule had no meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang also did not intend to explain to everyone. Only strength could prove everything. Song Mingjie looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with interest. Even though he had seen all kinds of beauties, he had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang was really the most unique beauty. Bang! Following Zheng Zishi's scream, everyone saw that Wang Xiaojun, who had been suppressed, suddenly found an opportunity to fight back. A lightning-fast fist smashed heavily on Zheng Zishi's nose. Zheng Zishi's nose immediately broke and blood flowed out, blurring Zheng Zishi's face. The sudden pain caused Zheng Zishi to be stunned. In this short moment, Wang Xiaojun immediately seized the opportunity and attacked Zheng Zishi like a storm, not giving Zheng Zishi the slightest chance to catch his breath. Zheng Zishi quickly responded, but how could he be Wang Xiaojun's opponent in a hurry? Suddenly, Zheng Zishi was defeated and was completely suppressed by Wang Xiaojun. The situation was the same as it was at the beginning of the competition. The only difference was that the target of the beating and the target of the beating were switched. This sudden change stunned many of the cultivators in the stands. They did not expect Wang Xiaojun to suddenly gain the upper hand. Zheng Zishi, fight back. Zheng Zishi, quickly counterattack. Are you stupid? Wang Xiaojun, well done. The cultivators who bet on Zheng Zishi's victory were anxious at this moment. They had bet a lot of money, and the cultivators who had already lost hope in Wang Xiaojun at this moment saw Wang Xiaojun suddenly reveal such power at this moment. Their eyes flashed with a strong sense of excitement, immediately cheering for Wang Xiaojun. As long as Wang Xiaojun won this round, they would make a huge profit. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a confident smile. When this round was over, her 50,000 gold coins would become 150,000 gold coins. Boom! Wang Xiaojun suddenly grabbed Zheng Zishi's hand and slammed Zheng Zishi onto the ground. At the same time, he mercilessly finished off Zheng Zishi with a kick. Winner takes all. Wang Xiaojun raised his hands, his face full of smiles. Chapter 10:11. Haha, the odd one of three. I made a fortune. Earlier on, you said that I didn't have a good eye. Now that Wang Xiaojun has won, I'm the one with the best eye. The cultivators who had won their bets were extremely pleased with themselves. They boasted arrogantly, as if they were Zhuge Liang. On the other hand, the cultivators who had lost their bets had a gloomy look on their faces. When they saw how pleased they were with themselves, they looked at Zheng Zishi, who had collapsed on the stage. They could not wait to beat Zheng Zishi up again. After Wang Xiaojun walked down from the stage, the people from the Blood-Chi Tower took Zheng Zishi's corpse away. From their indifferent looks, it was obvious that they were already used to the situation. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood why the cultivators in the Blood-Chi Tower would only win and never lose. This was because once they lost, they would no longer have the chance to stand in the arena again. A different kind of emotion spread in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. She could not understand. Although the rules of the Blood-Chi Tower were very special, if one only wanted to obtain the inheritance of the Blood-Chi Tower, there was no need to kill all of the opponents. One only needed to defeat one's opponent to win 10 consecutive victories. However, the people here only wanted to take one's life. After pondering for a moment, she felt that this atmosphere should have nothing to do with the Blood-Chi Tower. It was only because the people who gathered here were all ruthless people that the atmosphere had changed over time. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up. She was going to the counter to collect her reward. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the counter, the other party immediately handed her 150,000 gold coins. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately put the gold coins into her chinquan bag. Her elegant and refined face was calm and indifferent. She did not have the excitement and joy of someone her age. It was as if this was a very normal thing. The crowd then remembered that they had previously mocked Bailey Hongzhuang for not having a good eye. They did not expect the situation to take such a huge turn. At that moment, they could not understand whether Bailey Hongzhuang had seen through everything before placing the bet or if she was just trying her luck. With Bailey Hongzhuang's age, it was hard for them to believe that she had such good eyesight. However, if Bailey Hongzhuang was purely trying her luck, 50,000 gold coins was too much. In my opinion, this woman is definitely trying her luck. It's just that she's always been generous. That's not necessarily true. I think she's always been very confident in her own judgment. You don't believe me? Let's see if this woman's bet is right. Even though no one had much interaction with Bailey Hongzhuang still attracted everyone's attention. They were just waiting for Song Mingjie to be the first person to eat crabs. If it were any other woman, they would not think so much. However, this Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament was completely different from that of ordinary women. He was worried that if he provoked her, it would cause endless trouble. Therefore, they needed to observe the situation before making a decision. Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry to enter the ring. This was her first time in the Blood-Chi Tower. She needed to understand more before entering the ring. 10 wins in a row, in a place where experts gathered, was actually not a very simple matter. However, based on the current situation, she was still confident in her own strength. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang sat in the stands and watched the others compete. Occasionally, she would place a bet. It was quiet and comfortable. Chapter 10:12. After staying in the Blood-Chi field for a day, Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain understanding of the situation. As far as she was concerned, Most of the cultivators competing on this floor were at the second or third level of the Red Realm, which did not pose much pressure to her. It would not be difficult for her to win 10 matches in a row. Sciention cultivators were quite rare in other places, but in the Bloodland Abyss, even the weakest cultivators were at the Sciention realm, but they were basically all in the Red Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not very strong here, but it was not too weak either, so she adapted very well. Night slowly fell, and Bailey Hongzhuang also walked out of the Bloodchi Tower. On this day, although she spent 10,000 gold coins to enter the Bloodchi Tower, the gold coins she earned back had multiplied several times. It was really a big gain. In order to not attract too much attention, she did not bet on every match, but only occasionally. This result also proved that her eyesight was very good. As Bailey Hongzhuang left the Bloodchi Tower, Song Mingjie also said goodbye to a group of bad friends. Tonight, he would be immersed in the land of tenderness again. Tomorrow, you all just wait and see. Song Mingjie's face was full of confidence and complacency. Under his ecstasy fragrance, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely not have the slightest awareness, so naturally, he would be able to capture her. That girl must know that you will be there tonight, so she must be prepared. In my opinion, you may not succeed. Everyone roared with laughter. Song Mingjie waved his hand indifferently. Song Mingjie, will let the other party know before I pluck her. It's just that over the years, no beauty that I've set my eyes on has been able to escape from my grasp. He had always been wandering among the flowers, so this kind of thing was very familiar to him. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was prepared, he would still catch Bailey Hongzhuang off guard. Seeing Song Mingjie so confident, the smile on the corners of everyone's mouth became a little more mocking. It seemed that they would have a good show to watch tomorrow. Master, that Song Mingjie still hasn't given up on you. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with displeasure. It had discovered that Song Mingjie had been tailing them ever since they left the Bloodchi Tower. Clearly, he wanted to know where its master lived. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with ridicule. Since he wants to die, then let him come. This kind of guy was obviously a bastard who had defiled many women. Getting rid of him could be considered as upholding justice for the heavens. Xiaobai rubbed its hands. Although its master appeared calm, it knew that its master was angry. Once the master got angry, the consequences would be very serious. Song Mingjie was really courting death. Bailey Hongzhuang walked on the street unhurriedly. Her delicate face was covered with a layer of cold frost. She looked straight ahead, but there was a kind of aura that spread out. In this blood-ground abyss, it was impossible not to make a move. She could use this opportunity to make an example out of someone and let some people know that she was not easy to deal with. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang swagger back to the inn like this, Song Mingjie couldn't help but chuckle and shake his head. As expected of a young girl from some power, she thought that she was so great that she didn't care about anything. When she fell into his hands, he wanted to see if this woman could still be so cold. Thinking of this, Song Mingjie relaxed a little. It was the easiest for him to deal with this kind of inexperienced little girl. Chapter 10:13. Master, that guy has already left. After noticing that Song Mingjie had left, Xiao Hei turned to report to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. He will come tonight. Hearing this, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai looked at each other. It seemed that it was time for the black and white double demons to perform again. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door and saw Di Beichen. There was a faint smile on his handsome face. Wife, how did you feel in the Bloodchi Tower today? I understood the real situation you were talking about. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips were slightly raised. Before, Di Beichen had told her how cruel the blood-ground abyss was. Today, she had seen it thoroughly. She was afraid that every day there were countless cultivators who died in the blood ground. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang smile, Di Beichen nodded. This is the normal state of the Bloodchi field, but you will get used to it. He still remembered the first time he came to the blood-ground abyss. Looking at the rivers of blood around him, his heart was shocked, and he hated this place very much. Hongzhuang's performance was much better than he expected. It was even better than the first time he came to the blood-ground abyss. This place is indeed very special. Fortunately, most of the cultivators are in the Red Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. If the cultivators here were stronger, then she would also be walking on thin ice here. The inheritance of the Blood Chi Tower can only be obtained by cultivators in the Red Realm. Therefore, most of the cultivators in the Red Realm are in the vicinity. However, the difference between the Bloodground Abyss and the Demonic Abyss is that this is a gathering place for evil people. Therefore, many of the evil people here are not in the Red Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. The cultivators I saw today are all in the Red Realm. Di Beichen smiled faintly. That's the Blood Chi Tower. Those cultivators who are beyond the Crimson Realm have no interest in the Blood Chi Tower, so they won't go there. Where are they? It's in another area of the Bloodground Abyss. Do you want to take a look? Di Beichen asked with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her clear eyes filled with interest. Of course, since he was already here, he naturally had to take a look. Di Beichen patted Bailey Hongzhuang's head lovingly. His wife had always been curious about everything. If it was any other ordinary woman, they would definitely be terrified upon learning about such a place. However, Hongzhuang didn't seem to have these problems at all. Let's go, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately took Di Beichen's hand and prepared to set off. However, Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang back and put his hands on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. His deep eyes were filled with love and affection. Wife, you can't go there directly like this. Otherwise, it won't be so easy for us to come back. Di Beichen smiled warmly. He knew very well how beautiful his wife was. In this area, Hongzhuang's appearance was not a problem. Although it would cause some trouble, it was also an opportunity to gain experience. Hongzhuang was not a person who liked to cause trouble. Therefore, it was not a bad thing for trouble to provoke her when the difference in strength was not great. Chapter 10:14. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood Di Beichen's meaning and immediately smiled tenderly. I understand. I'll disguise myself. You can wear a mask too, Di Beichen said. When he came to the Bloodground Abyss with his master, he wore a mask, but that was because he had not mastered the art of disguise. Last time, he had seen how powerful Hongzhuang's disguise was. Perhaps a disguise would be more suitable. After all, wearing a mask would always attract a lot of attention and guesses. Once a disguise was used, it would be much more low-key. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I'll change my appearance very quickly. Wait a moment. Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang quickly take out some materials and then quickly get busy on his face. After a moment, an unfamiliar and ordinary face appeared in front of Di Beichen. The woman in front of him was about 20 years old and had an ordinary appearance. It was as if she could not be found in a crowd. She did not have the outstanding appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang from before. How is it? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Di Beichen nodded without hesitation. Very good. This way, no one will recognize your original appearance. I'll also help you change your appearance. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Di Beichen's face. It had to be said that Di Beichen's face was no less attractive than hers. From Bai Feng's actions, it could be seen that although there were not many women in the Bloodground Abyss, they were all very open. A man like Di Beichen would definitely be very attractive to them. Di Beichen nodded. He had wanted to use a mask, but since Hongzhuang was willing to help him change his appearance, she naturally did not mind. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang did not mess around. Instead, she helped Di Beichen to disguise himself as an ordinary person. In this way, the two of them would not attract attention. Bailey Hongzhuang had changed into a yellow dress. As a result, her appearance had completely changed. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked out of the restaurant together, Bailey Hongzhuang keenly discovered that Song Mingjie was in the vicinity. However, Song Mingjie did not reveal the slightest abnormality after seeing her. Obviously, Song Mingjie did not know that she was the person he had been staring at. With just this bit of ability, he was no match for her at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's glance was very natural, but Di Beichen still noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's action. That's Song Mingjie, is a flower thief. He is also a frequent visitor of the Bloodground Abyss. In the Snow Origin country, he is also quite famous. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Previously, she felt that Song Mingjie was not a good person, but she did not expect that this guy was a flower thief. Most of the women in the Snow Origin country are beautiful. It is normal for him to like this place. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled mockingly. Flower-picking thieves had always been the target of scorn. Everyone wanted to beat them up. But the flower-picking thief actually thought that he was romantic and unrestrained. It was really ridiculous. Indeed, every time Song Mingjie provoked someone he could not afford to provoke, he would stay in the Bloodground Abyss for a period of time. I have seen him here before. Di Beichen's expression was relaxed, as if he was telling a joke. However, a cold light quietly appeared in the depths of his eyes. It was fine if Song Mingjie's actions had nothing to do with him, but Song Mingjie provoked Hongzhuang. Naturally, he was extremely disgusted. Chapter 10:15. This guy has already made me his target tonight. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with a mocking smile. She didn't put Song Mingjie in her eyes at all. As for the despicable methods used by rapists, she knew them like the back of her hand. As a doctor, she naturally had a certain level of understanding in this area. Moreover, she had always been very interested in the unknown. If Song Mingjie used these methods to deal with her, she would make Song Mingjie unforgettable for the rest of his life. He's just a clown. Di Beichen's voice was slightly cold. This kind of despicable and shameless guy, just mentioning his name was enough to make people lose their appetite. If Song Mingjie dared to use such despicable methods on Hongzhuang, he would make Song Mingjie regret ever being born in this world. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed the change in Di Beichen's mood. She immediately smiled and said, "His tricks are useless against me. Don't worry." Although Di Beichen wasn't with her today, she knew that Di Beichen had been paying attention to her situation. Thinking about it, she was disgusted by Song Mingjie's actions, but Di Beichen should be even angrier. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen nodded slightly. It seemed that Hongzhuang was already prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang followed beside Di Beichen as they walked towards the depths of the Bloodground Abyss. The closer they got, the less cultivators Bailey Hongzhuang found in the surroundings. Moreover, many people looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen with a trace of reverence when they saw the direction they were walking in. The Bloodground Abyss is a very magical place. Although there are many evil people here, it is still a good place for many cultivators to train. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her clear eyes slightly. She understood that Di Beichen definitely had his reasons for saying this. It looked like there would probably be an even more exciting scene here. After walking for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that a memorial archway had suddenly appeared before them. It was like a brand new door. The streets behind the memorial archway became lively again. Even from a certain distance away, she could still sense the liveliness. "It's here." Di Beichen gazed ahead as a trace of emotion appeared on his face. In the past, this place had been a nightmare to him. "Master, the auras of cultivators here are much stronger than those near the Blood Tower." A wisp of surprise appeared in Xiaohei's eyes. She never expected that the Bloodground Abyss would have such a place. The cultivators here were on a completely different level from the previous place. The blood energy here seems to be even denser than near the Blood Tower. "It's a dangerous place," Xiaobai exclaimed with surprise. Xiaohei glanced at Xiaobai. "Don't tell me you're afraid." "Me? Afraid?" Xiaobai chuckled. "What haven't I seen in the world? Why would I be afraid of such a small scene? That's more like it." Xiaohei pursed her lips. Obviously, she was very satisfied with Xiaobai's answer. The white lion's originally soft fur stood on end at this moment. Its eyes vigilantly scanned the surroundings. This was its natural reaction after sensing danger. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked the white lion's fur when she sensed the change in it, making it feel slightly more at ease. She could also sense the unusual atmosphere, but she wasn't afraid. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and smiled faintly. "It'll be fine." Chapter 10:16. Although the cultivators here are very strong, they don't like to kill innocent people as much as the cultivators near the Blood Chi Tower. Bei Chen's eyes flashed with a starry light. It was precisely because he was strong that he cherished his own life even more, and the frequency of his actions was a bit lower. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. The more powerful one was, the more they cherished their lives. Many famous experts would not easily attack again for this reason. However, this should only be relatively speaking. Just the blood aura that permeated the air was enough to prove that everything was not so simple. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked slowly until they arrived at a restaurant. Di Beichen glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang, and the two of them walked in together. The restaurant was very lively. Everyone was chatting and joking with each other. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked in, everyone's eyes fell on them at the same time. After sizing them up for a moment, everyone had already shifted their gazes and continued to drink. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also quickly scanned all the cultivators in the restaurant. She could feel that although the cultivators did not continue to size them up, they were also paying attention to their every move from the corner of their eyes. After all, to the cultivators here, she and Di Beichen were unfamiliar faces. Similarly, Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed that these cultivators seemed to be drinking and chatting casually, but their clothes and appearances were completely different from the cultivators in other cities. In this world of ice and snow, many cultivators were bare-chested or wore leather armor on their upper bodies, revealing their thick and strong arms. They were rough and unrestrained. Not only that, but one could also tell what kind of state they were in from the eyes and killing intent that they inadvertently revealed. Yes, it was precisely because of this that they were particularly unrestrained, drinking and eating big bowls of wine. This kind of scene could not be seen anywhere else except the Blood-Round Abyss. Di Beichen led Bailey Hongzhuang to an empty seat with ease and said, "2 cups of Bloody Mary. Right away." The waiter immediately responded. Here, you only needed to shout out what you wanted, and the waiter would immediately prepare it for you. When Di Beichen ordered naturally, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the gazes that had been paying attention to them had dissipated. Everyone was still minding their own business, as if nothing had happened. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with surprise. Presumably, Di Beichen's actions let everyone know that it was not their first time here, so they stopped paying attention. Soon, the waiter held 2 glasses of wine and walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. "2 guests, please enjoy." After the waiter left, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the wine cup on the table. Inside the wine cup was a bright red liquid. Gently shaking it, it was magnificent and colorful, revealing a bewitching beauty. Looking at this cup of bright red liquid, Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of doubt. What exactly was this thing? She had never seen it before. Di Beichen smiled faintly, picked up the wine cup, and drank it in one gulp. The familiar taste was not considered delicious, but seemed to make him feel the past. "Try it," Di Beichen chuckled. Chapter 10:17. The moment the bright red liquid entered Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth, Bailey Hongzhuang already knew what it was. Human blood. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said as her gaze fell on the bright and clean wine cup. There should be something else mixed in here, otherwise it would be very sticky. Her ink-black phoenix eyes flickered with a sharp light. It was not that she had never tasted human blood before, so she was no stranger to this taste. However, after this treatment, the bloody smell was immediately reduced. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang immediately identify what it was, Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. In particular, Bailey Hongzhuang's indifference and calmness made him even more amazed. It seemed that Hongzhuang had experienced a lot in the past. Otherwise, she would not have been able to identify it so quickly. This at least proved that she had tasted it before. "You know a lot about it." Di Beichen smiled faintly. At their level, they had seen a lot of things, and Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was already very outstanding. Thinking back, when he first tasted this Bloody Mary, he vomited in embarrassment, and his master laughed at him at that time. However, everyone who came to the Bloodground Abyss should try a cup. Only then could they be considered to have truly come to the Bloodground Abyss. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. I didn't expect the people of the Bloodground Abyss to make it into a drink so brazenly. How amazing. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction after drinking it, their eyes were also filled with surprise. It seemed that this woman was born with the potential to be a bad person. In the Bloodground Abyss, everyone's sense of beauty had become completely different. Delicate little girls filled them with disgust, while ruthless and heartless women filled them with admiration. This is one of the main characteristics of the Bloodground Abyss. There's also a very mysterious trial here. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She didn't expect that there would be other trials in the Bloodground Abyss apart from the Bloodchi Tower. Seeing Di Beichen's expression, she knew that this trial wasn't simple. You should first pass the trial in the Bloodchi Tower. As for the trial in the depths of the Bloodground Abyss, now is not the time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She understood that Di Beichen said that because she was not strong enough. The cultivators present were at least at the 5th level of the Red Realm, and many of them were at the Yellow Realm. It could be seen that her strength was indeed very weak here. Since she couldn't participate even if she understood it now, she might as well wait until her strength increased. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with admiration. Bailey Hongzhuang was really too mature. She didn't act like a 16-year-old girl at all. However, it was this special side of her that was even more unforgettable. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept over the others. Besides the Bloody Mary, is the other food here also the same? Di Beichen chuckled. You're right. There are such things, but most people eat animal or demon beast meat. The demon beast meat here is also excellent. Try it. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Although she was no stranger to these things, it didn't mean that she liked them. Chapter 10:18. Di Beichen ordered a silk twine turtle soup, a green ridge bear bone, and a roasted ice-cold fish. The taste of demonic beast meat was much better than that of livestock. After being cooked, the demonic beast meat is filled with elemental energy and energy. After consuming it, it will be very beneficial to the bones and blood. Eat more. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Demonic beast meat was a delicacy. Every time the demonic beast meat was sold in a restaurant, it would always be fought over, and the price was also extremely high. The further one was from the demonic beast mountain range, the rarer the demonic beast meat was. Fortunately, the Bloodground Abyss was filled with demonic beasts, and there were quite a few demonic beasts here. As long as one was strong enough, it would not be difficult to hunt them down. Soon, the dish was served. The price of the demonic beast meat in the Bloodground Abyss could be said to be sky-high, but the amount was sufficient. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh after tasting a mouthful. The taste was truly excellent. After eating the demonic beast meat, she felt a warmth in her internal organs as the energy in the meat was absorbed. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were already drooling. They rarely had the chance to eat such a delicacy. The three beasts immediately sat on the table and started eating without caring about their image. Everyone had noticed the three demonic beasts beside Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen from the beginning. Although they were somewhat surprised, they did not take it to heart. After all, in this Bloodground Abyss, there were strange people everywhere. Normal people were the real strange people here. These three demonic beasts all looked very furry and cute. Compared to some people who raised poisonous snakes and had venomous spiders by their side, this no longer shocked them. After having a satisfying meal, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang also walked out of the restaurant. At the very front of this street is the training ground. It's very dangerous. Standing on the street, Di Beichen pointed to the endless street and introduced it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Is it very hot there? Bailey Hongzhuang looked up, her clear eyes flashing with a wise light. She had a faint premonition that the reason why these people were dressed like this was related to the trial on the other side of the street. Wife, you're really too smart, Di Beichen exclaimed. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang could analyze so many things after just one meal. Her observation skills were amazing. Yes, there's a very magical place at the other end of the street. After you come out of the trial in the Blood Chi Tower, we will go to the trial here together. Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang did not ask any more questions. She would come here one day. Di Beichin and Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the inn together. The faces of the three beasts were filled with satisfied smiles. This trip was really delightful. After returning to the inn, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichin also returned to their original appearances. Wife, that guy Song Mingjie will come to find you tonight. Di Beichin slowly said with a trace of worry in his handsome eyes. He understood Hongzhuang's strength. If Song Mingjie and Hongzhuang fought head-on, then he would not be worried at all. However, a sinister and cunning person like Song Mingjie would not fight head-on. Some of his underhanded methods were really hard to guard against. Beichin, don't worry, I can handle it. Chapter 1019. Seeing how confident Bailey Hongzhuang was, Di Beichin nodded. Be careful. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved goodbye to Di Beichin before returning to the house. Seeing the door close, a dark light flashed across Di Beichin's handsome eyes. Even if Hongzhuang was very confident, he would still stand guard by the side. If Song Mingjie dared to do anything to his wife, he would make Song Mingjie suffer a fate worse than death. Master, that Song Mingjie is still opposite the inn. It's already late at night, and I'm sure he'll be here soon. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, and her lips curled into an enchanting smile. It looks like we should start making preparations. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's unfathomable expression, the three beasts looked at each other. They did not know what their master was planning to do. Master, how do you plan to deal with Song Mingjie? Xiao He asked curiously. Xiao Bai and Bai Shi also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. Master always had endless ways to deal with people. This time, their eyes would probably light up again. I'll give him a taste of his own medicine. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her brows, and her lips curled into a bright and sly smile. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang did not delay. She immediately took out a snuff bottle and let the three beasts sniff it one by one. Then, she sniffed it herself and kept it in her heaven-earth bag. My incense is very powerful. I can't drug you guys. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and lit a stick of incense. A peach blossom fragrance immediately filled the room. It was faint but refreshing. The three beasts greedily sniffed the rich fragrance. This was not an ordinary fragrance. This peach blossom fragrance is really nice. I've never smelled such a nice smell before. White Lion's eyes flickered and his face was filled with intoxication. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled at the sight of the three beasts' joyful expressions. This is a knockout fragrance. Usually, one would faint immediately after smelling it. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasties immediately regained their senses. Their eyes were filled with amazement at the same time. They never thought that the effect of a knockout incense would be so powerful. Fortunately, Master had given them the antidote first. Otherwise, this fragrance would have been impossible to guard against. All right, now let's wait for Song Mingjie to take the bait. Bailey Hongzhuang leisurely strolled to the side of the bed and sat down, leisurely lying on the bed. Her indifferent appearance did not reveal the slightest bit of nervousness. Song Mingjie had been waiting on the opposite side of the inn for the best opportunity to make his move. From the light that leaked out from Bailey Hongzhuang's room, he could faintly see Bailey Hongzhuang's figure. It seems that this young lady had been careless and had not paid any attention to him at all. However, this was a good thing for him. This way, it would be more convenient for him to make his move. A young and inexperienced young lady was the easiest to deal with. Logically speaking, this young lady's looks were enough to topple cities, and he should have paid attention to her. However, she had been overly confident. She could not blame him for being ruthless. At the thought of this, Song Mingjie's eyes flashed with excitement. Chapter 1020. During this period of time, He had been wondering if it was time for him to leave the Bloodland abyss and wander around. However, he did not know if the other party had not given up on looking for him. He did not expect such a lady to appear at such a time. It really made his heart itch unbearably. A top-grade beauty was better than many ordinary ladies. Song Mingjie slowly stood up and rubbed his hands. His eyes were filled with excitement. It was getting late. It was time for him to make his move. In the next moment, Song Mingjie immediately made his move. Dressed in black, it was difficult to distinguish him in the darkness. With a sweep of his body, Song Mingjie directly leaped onto the roof. His movements were extremely light and almost did not make any sound. His lightness skill was very good. This was a prerequisite for a rapist. Lightness skill was the most important. Gently lifting the roof tile, Song Mingjie found that the room was pitch black. However, with his extraordinary eyesight, he immediately found Bailey Hongzhuang resting on the bed. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang was still looking out of the window with her eyes wide open. Even in the night, he could still see her beautiful face clearly. After confirming that Bailey Hongzhuang was in the room, a smug smile appeared in Song Mingjie's eyes. It seemed that this lady was not without her guard up against him. However, this little bit of precaution was useless against him. Immediately after, Song Mingjie took out a soul enchanting incense from his Chinquan bag. This was a great weapon that he had used to travel the world for many years. Many ladies have been defeated by this soul enchanting incense. After lighting up the soul enchanting incense, Song Mingjie blew it into the room. This soul enchanting incense was colorless and odorless. It could make people unconscious without anyone noticing. When this lady woke up, everything would be completely different. Thinking of this, Song Mingjie felt an indescribable sense of pride. In the darkness, Bailey Hongzhuang's bright phoenix eyes flickered with a mocking light. She silently counted in her heart, 3, 2, 1. In the next second, a voice rang out on the roof. Clearly, Song Mingjie had been knocked out. Master, Song Mingjie has fainted on the roof. Xiao Hei's eyes sparkled with excitement. It seemed that Master was right. The effect of the knockout incense was extraordinarily good. Song Mingjie fainted uncontrollably after smelling it from such a high roof. Next, Song Mingjie would have to admit that he was unlucky. When Song Mingjie woke up, he felt weak and powerless all over. There was an indescribable sense of weakness. However, as soon as he opened his eyes, Song Mingjie saw Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. Why are you here?" His figure moved, and only then did Song Mingjie discover that he was actually tied tightly to the chair, and the essence energy in his body was even out of his control. Song Mingjie immediately recalled the situation before he arrived. He only remembered smelling a very enchanting fragrance. He thought it was the incense that Bailey Hongzhuang liked. After all, many women like to burn incense to make themselves appear more alluring. However, he never thought that he, a womanizer who had been in the pugilistic world for many years, would actually be enchanted by Bailey Hongzhuang. This was simply a disgrace. "You're in my house, and you're asking me why I'm here?" Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled slightly. She looked at Song Mingjie mockingly and swaggered over to sit opposite him. "What do you want?" Chapter 10:21. What do you think I'll do first? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. The disgust in her eyes was obvious. "As long as you let me go, I can promise you anything." Panic flashed across Song Mingjie's eyes. This situation of being controlled by others was the most despairing. He didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang had done to him to make him completely lose the power to resist. At this moment, he could be said to be a fish on a chopping board. "Weren't you very proud when you were teasing me today? Why do you become so cowardly now?" Bailey Hongzhuang held a dagger in front of Song Mingjie and gestured as if she was thinking about where to start. "That was because I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I definitely won't dare to do it again," Song Mingjie hurriedly said. At this moment, he was already regretting it. If he had known that Bailey Hongzhuang was such a difficult girl to deal with, he would never have chosen Bailey Hongzhuang to make a move on her. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't take Song Mingjie's words to heart at all. This kind of guy always had the same face when he was begging for mercy. He probably hated her to the core. Song Mingjie kept thinking. This was the first time this girl had come to the Bloodland Abyss. It seemed that her personality was still relatively easy to deceive. As long as he begged for mercy, he might have a chance to live. Unfortunately, Song Mingjie had completely forgotten that he had always thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was easy to deal with. However, in the end, he still fell into the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. Your begging seems very sincere. As long as you let me go today, from today onwards, I'll be your dog. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I swear. Song Mingjie saw that there was hope for escape and continued to beg for mercy. As long as he could escape this calamity today, he would definitely teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson tomorrow. This time, he had been careless. He didn't expect this woman to have such a strong knockout fragrance. Next time, he would make Bailey Hongzhuang regret it. Master, this fellow's mouth is smeared with honey. You can't trust his words at all. Xiaohe looked at Song Mingjie in disgust. This guy didn't have any backbone at all. At this moment, he looked like he wanted nothing more than to kneel down and lick his master's shoes. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly as she stroked Xiaohe's soft fur. She was well aware of Song Mingjie's personality. Rapists never had any moral integrity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done such despicable things. Are you really willing to listen to me? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You'll do whatever I say? Song Mingjie nodded repeatedly. That's right. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Then what if I told you to die? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into an enchanting smile. It was less cold and more charming and more deadly seductive. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Song Mingjie's expression instantly turned ugly. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. He obviously didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to say such words. What do you mean by that? Song Mingjie's expression was ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang's words gave him a bad premonition. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders indifferently. I'm just thinking about how I should let you die. Song Mingjie's face turned pale. You and I have no enmity between us. Aren't you being too vicious? Chapter 1022. Song Mingjie, you seem to have forgotten that this is the blood-ground abyss. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled coldly. I can kill you if I don't like you. What's more, you have bad intentions towards me. You can only blame yourself for not having good eyesight. Song Mingjie looked at the coldness and murderous intent in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes and finally understood. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't the inexperienced little girl he thought. On the contrary, Bailey Hongzhuang's viciousness didn't lose out to them at all. Speaking of which, he had indeed made a wrong move. Just as Song Mingjie was pondering, Bailey Hongzhuang took out a pill and fed it to Song Mingjie. What did you feed me? Song Mingjie immediately wanted to spit out the pill, but it melted in his mouth, and he couldn't spit it out even if he wanted to. Other than poison, what else could I have fed you? Bailey Hongzhuang said casually, and then lowered her head to check the things in Song Mingjie's chinquan bag. Looking at the bottles and jars, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh. This Song Mingjie was indeed immersed in this path. The things inside were too complete. Even the rapists she had met before probably didn't have as many things as Song Mingjie. Song Mingjie was choked by Bailey Hongzhuang's casual words. He didn't expect this woman to say such words so casually. He had really misjudged her before. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly raised her head, and her gaze fell on Song Mingjie. Song Mingjie, I think that you're a rapist. If you die so simply, it would be too uncharacteristic. So I've decided to give you a very unique death. Song Mingjie was startled. He had already accepted his fate after eating the poison. The most common thing to see in the blood-ground abyss was death. Although he didn't expect that the next person to die would be him, it was fine after accepting his fate. However, after listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang took out a pink porcelain bottle from Song Mingjie's chinquan bag. You should like this thing very much, right? Seeing what Bailey Hongzhuang took out, Song Mingjie's face instantly turned ugly. He could almost imagine the effect of Bailey Hongzhuang feeding him the pill. He couldn't accept it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang ignored Song Mingjie's words and immediately stuffed the pill into Song Mingjie's mouth. If you die so normally, it would be too unbecoming of your identity. Since you like to drug girls so much, I'll let you have a taste of being drugged. Song Mingjie's face instantly turned extremely ugly. As the pill entered his body, he felt a dry heat spreading from his body. He was somewhat out of control. Normally, he would be extremely excited to see such a situation. However, at this moment, he only wanted to die. Chapter 1023. If Song Mingjie had known that Bailey Hongzhuang had casually taken out the most effective pill, he would have vomited blood on the spot. Unfortunately, he was now delirious from the effects of the pill and had no idea what he was doing. The effect of the pill is really fast. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a sneer. She reached out and directly knocked Song Mingjie unconscious. She immediately untied the rope that tied Song Mingjie. Her figure flashed, and Song Mingjie was placed on the street. Looking at Song Mingjie in the middle of the street, Bailey Hongzhuang clapped her hands. It was a success. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and found Di Beichen staring at her from the second floor. Her face instantly broke into a joyful smile. In the next second, a white light flashed, and Bailey Hongzhuang appeared in Di Beichen's room. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, Di Beichen had already wrapped his arms around her slender waist. The two of them stood in front of the window. Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang from behind. "Wife, what did you do to Song Mingjie?" He had been paying attention to the movements in the room next door. From the moment Song Mingjie appeared, he had been fully focused on making preparations. If Hongzhuang could not handle it, he would immediately make his move. However, he did not expect that Hongzhuang would not be able to make Song Mingjie unconscious. Hongzhuang had actually made Song Mingjie unconscious so cleanly. Come to think of it, Song Mingjie had been a womanizer for so many years. It was probably the first time he had been drugged unconscious. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head to look at Di Beichen. Her smile revealed a hint of slyness, like a sly little fox. "I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. As for what kind of effect it will have, let's see." Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Song Mingjie on the street. She had always been disgusted with womanizers. How many women's happiness had been ruined by their hands? At this moment, seeing Song Mingjie suffer the consequences of his own actions, she felt that he deserved it. If Song Mingjie had not brought these things with him, she would not have anything good to give Song Mingjie. Although she had made the sleeping incense herself, it was for emergencies. As for the pills and other despicable things, she really did not have them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen immediately understood what Bailey Hongzhuang had done. However, this was really a good idea. Di Beichen suddenly felt that Song Mingjie's meeting with Hongzhuang could be considered as a blessing in disguise. If Song Mingjie was conscious, then he would definitely regret it. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Song Mingjie on the ground was slowly waking up. At this moment, Song Mingjie's face was flushed and he was delirious. As he walked, he began to take off his clothes. As a cultivator approached, Song Mingjie immediately went up to him like a cat that had seen a fish. The man was stunned when he saw Song Mingjie's appearance, but a sinister smile soon appeared on his face. In the next second, the delirious Song Mingjie was directly carried away by this person. Seeing Song Mingjie being carried away, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She originally wanted to watch a good show and make Song Mingjie lose face in the blood-grave abyss. Why was he carried away? Could this person be Song Mingjie's friend? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and murmured softly. Chapter 1024. Di Beichen's smile widened when he saw the confusion on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Song Mingjie was really going to cry later. "Wife, there are some people in the blood-ground abyss who have special hobbies," Di Beichen said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and looked at Di Beichen in confusion. "Special hobbies? Di Baichen nodded slightly. For example, Wangyang hobbies. As soon as the words came out, Bailey Hong Zhuang suddenly understood. She looked at the direction where the man disappeared with Song Ming Jie, and then looked at Di Baichen. You mean Song Ming Jie? That's right. Di Baichen confirmed Bailey Hong Zhuang's guess. He had stayed in the blood-ground abyss for a while before, so he had a certain understanding of the situation. He knew about the man who carried Song Mingjie away. Song Mingjie was probably going to suffer this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth twitched. In the end, she couldn't help but laugh. Even she didn't expect Song Mingjie to end up like this. Compared to the other men in the blood-ground abyss, Song Mingjie was indeed soft and tender. Song Mingjie was the only one who could understand the feeling of being a rapist who ended up being raped by someone else. The three beasts felt helpless after hearing this answer. They had never expected this outcome. However, this was the best ending for Song Mingjie. The next day, when Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the Blood-Chi Tower again, she clearly felt many gazes on her. These gazes were slightly different from yesterday's interest. Instead, they were filled with emotion and fear. Bailey Hongzhuang is here. You've heard, right? Song Mingjie was tortured very badly last night. He died on the road this morning. I heard. I didn't expect Song Mingjie to end up so badly. This woman is quite ruthless. She can even think of such a move. At the thought of this, everyone felt their hair stand on end. This Bailey Hongzhuang was not as easy to deal with as they thought. On the other hand, Bailey Hongzhuang had always been quiet, but once she did, she would amaze the world. This method was truly chilling. For a moment, everyone no longer thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was a pushover. Otherwise, if this kind of trick was used on them, they would really be better off dead. In my opinion, that might not be the case. It's very likely that Song Mingjie wanted to drug this lady, but in the end, this lady made him eat it instead. As soon as he said this, everyone nodded. Presumably, this was the only possibility. After all, this young lady was not a rapist. How could she have such despicable things on her? It could only be said that Song Mingjie brought this upon himself. Feeling everyone's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to sit on the spectator stand and watch today's competition. She needed to understand more before she could go up on stage to challenge. Last night, she had asked Di Baichen. It was not necessary to kill in this arena. Back then, Di Baichen did not take anyone's life in the arena. After all, they were here to train and improve their cultivation. They were not here to torture and kill cultivators. This kind of indiscriminate killing of innocents was not beneficial to their cultivation. Instead, it would create a certain demonic barrier that would affect their mentality. The gains did not make up for the losses. Chapter 1025. After watching 2 matches, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that the time was almost up. It was time for her to make a move. As long as she won 10 consecutive matches in the arena, she would be able to participate in the trial on the first level. There was no need to continue wasting time on the first level. Moreover, there were 9 levels in the Blood-Chi Tower. She had to break through to the last level to obtain the inheritance. It seemed like a long time, but she did not intend to waste time here. Once she surpassed the Red Realm, it meant that she would no longer be able to obtain the inheritance of the Blood-Chi Tower. Therefore, she did not intend to delay any longer. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to participate in the arena, a figure appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes slightly and looked coldly at the unfamiliar figure in front of her. She had never seen this person before. The man was dressed in black and had an ugly appearance. His face was dotted with pockmarks, and his eyes were sinister and terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang could feel a murderous aura from his eyes. Song Mingjie, was it you who killed him? The man's sinister eyes locked onto Bailey Hongzhuang. It was as if Bailey Hongzhuang said yes, his fist would greet Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing the man appear, the cultivators on the first level of the Blood-Chi field had a strange look in their eyes. They were all waiting to watch a good show. Xiong Kai is here. Xiong Kai is Song Mingjie's good brother. Now that Song Mingjie is in trouble, Xiong Kai will definitely avenge him. This Xiong Kai is also a strange person. He has been in the blood-chi abyss for a long time, but he doesn't care about others at all. The only brother he has a good relationship with is Song Mingjie. This girl is really unlucky. First, she met Song Mingjie, and now Xiong Kai is looking for trouble. I remember the last time I saw Xiong Kai, he was already at the 5th level of the Red Realm. I haven't seen him for a while. I'm afraid he has become stronger. Everyone looked at each other. Xiong Kai's strength was considered one of the strongest among them. Usually, they did not want to offend Xiong Kai because this guy was not willing to talk. On the other hand, this guy was stubborn. No matter who offended him, no matter what they said, it was useless. This guy would not stop until he was dead. He was a stubborn bull. Because of this, no one was willing to have too much communication with Xiong Kai. However, this guy was rarely seen, and they did not expect that he would suddenly appear now. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferently at Xiong Kai in front of her. Everyone's voices were not small, so she already knew the identity of the man in front of her. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was cold and indifferent. Her red lips parted slightly. That's right, it's me. Xiong Kai's Xiong Kai to ask. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the malice in Xiong Kai's eyes instantly turned into raging anger, and he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. How dare you kill Song Mingjie? I want you dead. Xiong Kai gritted his teeth, as if Bailey Hongzhuang was his mortal enemy. He only had one brother, Song Mingjie. Other than that, he had no other friends. Now that Song Mingjie was dead, he was the only one left. Chapter 10:26. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression remained calm and indifferent in the face of Xiong Kai's outburst of rage. She looked at him with an indescribable indifference. That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a cold smile. There were many people in this world who had spoken harshly to her and wanted her dead. However, she was still alive and well. It was not an easy task to kill her. The crowd gasped when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's domineering reply. They never thought that this young lady would be so domineering. Even in the face of Xiong Kai's arrogant words, she was still unconcerned. Her mental fortitude alone was enough to make them sigh in admiration. It seems that they had been wrong about her. Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not a little girl who had just stepped out and was inexperienced. On the contrary, she had enough confidence and power to dare to do so. Xiong Kai was clearly shocked when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. His eyes grew even gloomier as he said, "You'd better be careful. The moment you walk out of the Blood-Chi Tower will be the moment you fall. However, don't worry, I will also let you die in utter humiliation." When Song Mingjie thought about how Song Mingjie would die in such humiliation, he could not help but cry out for Song Mingjie. As Song Mingjie's good brother, he would definitely avenge Song Mingjie and let this woman in front of him accompany Song Mingjie in agony and humiliation. If this was not the Blood-Chi field, he would have been unable to restrain himself and would have made his move. However, he understood the rules of the Blood-Chi field. No one would be able to gain anything by causing trouble here. Once he had spoken, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were like a sharp blade as they shot towards Xiong Kai with an eerie chill and murderous intent. This fellow's way of thinking was as shameless as Song Mingjie's. Birds of a feather flocked together. This was indeed the truth of the world. She would not be courteous toward a fellow like this. Xiong Kai's eyes flashed with astonishment when he sensed Bailey Hongzhuang's intimidating glare. He had stayed in the Bloodland Abyss for a very long time and had sensed all sorts of murderous intent. However, this was the first time he had sensed such a grave expression from the woman in front of him. Looks like Song Mingjie really offended a not simple opponent. Xiong Kai knew very well what kind of person his brother was, but it was precisely because he was his brother that nothing else mattered. If you have the guts, I'll see you in the arena. Bailey Hongzhuang left these cold words, and in the next moment, she went directly to the ring. She had originally intended to participate in the single elimination tournament, but Xiong Kai's appearance had blocked her path. Since Xiong Kai wanted to take revenge for Song Mingjie, then he might as well settle it in the ring and save some trouble. Everyone watched as the graceful white figure walked onto the battling platform. Their eyes were immediately filled with astonishment, and their hearts were filled with extreme shock. Isn't this girl a little too daring? Kai is a real master above the 5th level of the Red Realm. Isn't it suicide for her to provoke Kai? Perhaps this young lady is new here and doesn't understand Kai's strength. However, there will be a good show to watch in a while. I have always been a person who has a tender heart for the fair sex. The thought of such a great beauty dying in the arena really makes me a little excited. A man happily drank a mouthful of wine. He liked to watch this kind of wonderful drama the most. Chapter 10:27. In the ring, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Kai coldly, and her lips curled into a mocking smile. What? You don't have the guts to come up? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's provocative words, Kai sneered. How could Kai be afraid of such a woman? In the next moment, Kai walked up to the ring without hesitation. The gloominess in his eyes remained unchanged. You think too highly of yourself. However, Bailey Hongzhuang ignored Kai's words. I found that you and Song Mingjie both have one thing in common. That is, you talk a lot of nonsense. She did not even want to say a word to such a shameless scum. Kai's face instantly turned cold. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang still dared to say such a thing. She really did not take him seriously. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Kai standing in the ring, the referee immediately walked up and recorded their information. However, just as the referee turned to leave, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly called out to the referee. Wait, what's the matter? The referee turned around and asked. I bet 100,000 gold coins that I will win. As her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly took out a Chinquan bag and handed it to the referee. When the crowd saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually chose to bet on herself, they could not help but feel more surprised. Logically speaking, this battle should be completely dominated by Kai. Bailey Hongzhuang's current actions were completely suicidal. But now, Bailey Hongzhuang actually bet on herself. Could it be that she was too confident in herself? At the thought of this, the crowd felt that it was incredible. Bailey Hongzhuang looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. If she was a cultivator at the 5th level of the Red Realm, her talent would be too amazing. Kai's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, the sarcasm in his eyes deepened. Anyway, Bailey Hongzhuang would not continue to appear in this world after the end of the challenge tournament. Even if he kept the money, he could give himself a glimmer of hope by betting. However, all of these were meaningless tricks in his eyes. Soon, the referee had already recorded the information of the two people. Kai, 6th level of the Red Realm, 10 consecutive victories. Bailey Hongzhuang, 4th level of the Red Realm, first battle. With the referee's voice, the crowd looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a touch of amazement. Previously, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not simple, but they did not expect that she was already a cultivator at the 4th level of the realm at such a young age. This kind of cultivation talent was amazing. However, everyone only had one emotion for such a talented cultivator, and that was jealousy. If such a talent could directly disappear from the world, they would be happy to see it. Kai was also a little surprised after knowing the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength would be so strong. In the next moment, the ruthlessness in Kai's eyes deepened. No matter how strong Bailey Hongzhuang was, she would die tragically in his hands today. He would definitely let Bailey Hongzhuang die tragically. After the crowd understood the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang, they went to bed. This was a rare good show, so they naturally would not miss it. Chapter 10:28. This win rate is simply enough to determine the outcome. Kai's odds are 1 o'clock. 1, and Bailey Hongzhuang's odds are 110. This is not good for Bailey Hongzhuang at all. This is normal. Everyone knows Kai's strength. The difference between their cultivations is 2 levels. This result has already been shown. Let's bet more. Although the odds are very low, it's still a steady profit. Everyone looked a little excited. They had always loved this kind of battle, where the outcome of the battle was almost certain. Every time there was a battle like this, the blood arena was destined to lose money. However, the blood arena collected a lot of admission fees every day. Losing a little money was not a big deal to them. For a while, everyone bet on Xionkai's victory, and the amount of money was increasing. Compared to the liveliness on Xionkai's side, on the other hand, on Bailey Hongzhuang's side, there were no other cultivators who bet on her winning. After all, no one wanted to lose money for no reason. When everyone saw the result, they could not help but sigh. This was probably the first time in the history of the Blood Arena that there was such a huge disparity in bets. Bailey Hongzhuang could be considered to have set a precedent. In the past, even if a cultivator had no chance of winning, his friends would at least bet to encourage him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was alone, which was why she ended up like this. This group of blind guys have no foresight at all. Xiao Hei's face was full of anger. What kind of person was her master? These guys all thought that she would lose. How stupid. That's right. It will be time for these guys to regret it. Xiaobai was also unhappy. What was so great about a level 6 Red Realm? If they really fought, who knew who would win and who would lose? In the eyes of Xiao Hei and Xiaobai, although Xionkai's strength was good, no one could compare to their master. What's more, their master had fought with people of a higher level. Even if the difference of 2 levels was a little big, Master still had a lot of trump cards. After knowing the result of everyone's bet, Xionkai sneered and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang mockingly. Now, you should understand how overconfident you were, right? Xionkai's eyes were sinister and ruthless. His good brother had actually died in the hands of this stupid woman. He really felt that it was not worth it. The competition hasn't started yet. How do you know the final result? Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. She was not moved by Xionkai's words at all. Hee, Xionkai sneered. No matter how calm Bailey Hongzhuang was now, in his eyes, it was just a pretense by Bailey Hongzhuang. I understand your plan. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She was too lazy to bother with this guy talking to himself. Once you walk out of the Blood Chi Tower, I will let you die in humiliation. That's why you chose to fight with me in this arena. This way, you can die more easily. Xionkai looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's face, the ridicule on his lips growing. However, your wishful thinking is wrong. On this stage, I will also let you die in incomparable humiliation. I think everyone here wants to see what kind of posture you have under your clothes. Chapter 1029. Following Xionkai's words, the coldness in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. The ice was so cold that it almost solidified, like a sharp blade, incomparably sharp. Her ink-black phoenix eyes emitted a terrifyingly sharp and intimidating light. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice became increasingly gloomy. I will let you die a horrible death. If it was said that Bailey Hongzhuang was indifferent towards Xionkai previously, at this moment, she only wanted to personally take Xionkai's head and let him die an incomparably painful death. However, when Xionkai heard Bailey Hongzhuang's threat, it was as if he had heard a joke. Ha ha! Big words. I really admire your courage. Xionkai laughed out loud. That playful and joking look clearly showed that he did not place Bailey Hongzhuang in his eyes at all. This kind of light threat was simply a joke. No matter how stubborn Bailey Hongzhuang was, it was of no use. Bailey Hongzhuang's icy cold eyes were like a cold lake in October, containing the power to swallow everything. Do you know that you're very ugly? Once these words were spoken, the smile on Xionkai's face instantly froze. Especially when you smile, you're even uglier. If I were you, with this appearance, I would find a mask and wear it, so as not to spoil people's appetites. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were increasingly merciless. Usually, Xiantian cultivators would look better than ordinary people due to the long period of energy nourishment. Out of all the cultivators she had seen, this Xionkai was undoubtedly the ugliest. Now, this ugly and disgusting fellow was actually laughing so unscrupulously in front of her. It really made her feel extremely disgusted. Xiong Kai's body trembled as he slowly clenched his fists. He stared furiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. The biggest pain in his life was his appearance. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like a knife piercing his heart. It was because of his appearance that he only had one friend, Song Mingjia. The others did not really treat him as a friend at all. He could still remember everyone's mocking gazes, and it was only when his strength was strong enough to shut everyone up that he felt a little better. However, now Bailey Hongzhuang had exposed his scars. He must make Bailey Hongzhuang die without a burial place. The competition begins. After the referee recorded everything, he also announced the start of the competition. As soon as the referee's voice faded, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiong Kai started the battle. Bailey Hongzhuang stepped forward, and with a thought, the majestic power in her body suddenly roared out, and the aura of the fourth level of the Red Realm immediately broke out. Xiong Kai's movements were also extremely fast, and the aura of the sixth stage of the Red Realm spread out in an instant, directly blocking the aura of Bailey Hongzhuang. The corners of Xiong Kai's mouth curled into a sneer. Just wait for your miserable death. Bailey Hongzhuang snorted coldly, her hands gradually covered with a layer of jade color. The cultivation of the sixth level of the Red Realm was indeed stronger than her, both in terms of strength and primary force. However, compared with these unorthodox cultivators, her trump card was incomparable. In the next moment, Xiong Kai's body moved and suddenly appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, his tyrannical fist mercilessly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang's face. The huge fist rapidly enlarged in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, but her beautiful face was still indifferent and calm. In fact, she was so calm that it was a little scary. Bang! Chapter 10:30. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang, who was at level 4 of the Red Realm, was actually going head-to-head with Xiong Kai, who was at level 6 of the Red Realm, there was a hint of surprise in their eyes. Wasn't this a suicidal move? Not to mention the huge gap in strength between the two levels of strength. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang was just a girl. Competing in strength was suicidal. However, the next scene shocked everyone. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang did not show the slightest disadvantage after the head-on collision with Xiong Kai. On the contrary, this was just the beginning of the battle between the two. Bang, bang, bang. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a cold light, and her fists wrapped in Yuanli continued to attack Xiong Kai. She had only stayed in the Bloodground Abyss for a short 2 days, but the violent factor in her heart continued to spread, and she just wanted to have a good fight. As for the Xiong Kai, he was undoubtedly an excellent target. Every time the two of them collided, there would be a burst of sonic booms, and the air would explode directly, but the two of them were getting faster and faster. Bailey Hongzhuang's punches were as fast as thunder, as fast as lightning, and like a storm, she crazily hit Xiong Kai, and all the violent factors in her heart were also expressed freely under such a tyrannical bombardment. With the help of the snow dragon grass, her physical strength had also improved a lot during this period of time. At this moment, in the battle, she immediately found that her body was tougher than before, and this strength was also more powerful. Xiong Kai discovered that Bailey Hongzhuang was extraordinary at the first moment when he fought with Bailey Hongzhuang, because the power that Bailey Hongzhuang broke out was much stronger than that of an ordinary level 4 of the Red Realm cultivator. The more they fought, the more shocked he was. Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power, strength, and physical strength were shocking. Moreover, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had not used a killing move on him, but was just using him as a target to vent. Although he had no evidence for this, based on his combat experience, he believed that his judgment was not wrong. Thinking of this, Xiong Kai did not dare to underestimate Bailey Hongzhuang anymore. Otherwise, if he failed miserably, it would be really painful. Everyone looked at the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiong Kai, and the original look of watching a play had changed a little, and their eyes were full of shock. Logically speaking, this was a one-sided situation. Why was the situation different from what they had imagined? The two's figures were as fast as lightning. The speed of their punches was as fast as lightning, and their punches were even more amazing. They could only hear the sound of the continuous explosions, and from the storm like a storm of attacks. Bang! Bangses is Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang gasped for breath and retreated 2 steps, her eyes still as sharp as a knife. After this fight, she was very satisfied with the improvement in her strength these days. Now it was time to get serious. Xiong Kai was knocked to the ground by Bailey Hongzhuang, and his face was really ugly. His cultivation was 2 levels higher than Bailey Hongzhuang, but now he was knocked to the ground by Bailey Hongzhuang. This was really embarrassing. Xiong Kai immediately stood up with a carp flip. His ugly face was gloomy and vicious. He had to put away his underestimation of his opponent. No matter what, he must avenge Song Mingjie. Compared to Xiong Kai's seriousness, Bailey Hongzhuang looked very indifferent. Chapter 1031. In terms of cultivation resources and fighting methods, cultivators who came from powerful families were much stronger than those who came from the wild. That was because they had the experience left to them by their predecessors, which allowed them to take fewer detours. As a result, their cultivation speed was naturally much faster than those who came from the wild. Bailey Hongzhuang had only fought for a short while, but she had already understood Xiong Kai's true strength. Cultivation was indeed very important, but the fighting strength of different cultivators was not always the same. If the person standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang at this moment was a cultivator of the 6th level of the Red Realm from an aristocratic family, it would be much more difficult for her to deal with him. As I said, I will make you die miserably. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold, and her eyes were full of contempt and coldness, as usual when she looked at Xiong Kai. Based on what Xiong Kai had said before, she would not be merciful to him. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's confident words, Xiong Kai's face was a little ugly, and he had a faint premonition in his heart. The strength that Bailey Hongzhuang showed was not something that an ordinary cultivator of the 4th level of the Red Realm could have. At this moment, the people in the stands also realized that the situation was not good. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about the 2-level gap at all. There had been some powerful cultivators in the Bloodground Abyss, but this kind of cultivator was relatively rare. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was one of them. If that was the case, wouldn't all the bets they had made previously be for naught? At this thought, everyone's faces became frightened. They thought that this was a profitable business, but who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's fighting strength was completely unexpected? Xiong Kai, defeat her. Come on, you're a cultivator of the 6th level of the Red Realm, but you can't beat a woman of the 4th level of the Red Realm. You can go to hell. It's okay if you're ugly, but if you are weak, you should go and accompany Song Mingjie. Everyone's cheers and angry voices rang out. They didn't want their money to go down the drain like this. Xiong Kai's expression turned extremely gloomy when he heard the crowd's words. He knew very well what kind of people these people were. However, he was unable to accept their words at this moment. Xiong Kai clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white and his veins bulged as he glared at Bailey Hongzhuang. Your strength is indeed not bad, but it won't be so easy for you to defeat me. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xiong Kai indifferently. Cut the crap. In the next moment, a sparkling and translucent sword appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Origin energy surged endlessly into the sharp sword. After Bailey Hongzhuang understood Xiong Kai's true strength, she didn't want to waste any more time. She wanted to end the battle quickly and solve this problem as soon as possible. Xiong Kai was keenly aware of Bailey Hongzhuang's murderous intent. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang was serious this time. Thinking of this, Xiong Kai's mind was also a little nervous. At the same time, a killing blade appeared in Xiong Kai's hand. Ah! Xiong Kai roared, raised his weapon, and immediately rushed toward Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1032. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's ghostly figure, A look of astonishment surfaced in everyone's eyes. Did they not see clearly or something? Just as everyone was pondering, Xiong Kai had already crashed to the ground. Fresh blood splattered on the stage. Xiong Kai only felt a little regretful that his attack did not succeed in landing on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Just as he was about to turn around and continue his attack, he found that his body had uncontrollably fallen to the ground. Xiong Kai was puzzled, but suddenly found that the blood on his feet was continuously spurting out like a fountain. Instantly, Xiong Kai's face turned ghastly pale. He stared blankly at his legs that had already separated from his body. He simply could not believe that this scene was real. This was only a short exchange of blows. He did not feel Bailey Hongzhuang's attack at all. But now, he had actually become like this? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiong Kai indifferently. Her color glass sword had always been extremely sharp. Under the attention of her origin power, it could even cut through hair with a blow. Moreover, the shadowless kill was a martial skill that could take a person's life without anyone noticing. Its effect had always been very shocking. If she wanted to kill Xiong Kai would have already died in that exchange of blows. However, she had said that she would make Xiong Kai die a painful death. Long ago, when Xiong Kai had said that he wanted to humiliate her in the arena, she had already made up her mind. Similarly, she would not let Xiong Kai die so easily. What do you think of this way of dying? The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile, but her beautiful eyes flickered with ruthlessness and cruelty. She had never shown mercy to her enemies. In a place like the bloody ground abyss, in the face of everyone's provocation, the best way was to display one's strength. Even though she had already taught Song Mingjie a lesson yesterday, everyone had not seen it with their own eyes, so the deterrence was not enough. But now, she had defeated Xiong Kai in front of everyone. This was enough. Xiong Kai's expression was extremely ugly. Fresh blood kept spurting out, causing his face to become even paler. Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiong Kai gritted his teeth and endured the intense pain from his wounds. He understood that it was impossible for him to leave the blood aura field alive today. Even if he managed to leave this place alive, it would be useless. Without his legs, he would be nothing more than a cripple. The only thing he hated was that he couldn't avenge Song Mingjie. Bailey Hongzhuang pointed her sword at Xiong Kai. You can only blame yourself for provoking me. You win. Xiong Kai's voice was mixed with forbearance and anger. He had never thought that he would be defeated by a woman who was weaker than him. The next moment, Xiong Kai raised his frenzied saber and swung it at his own neck. Instead of being humiliated by Bailey Hongzhuang and then dying, it was better to give himself a quick death first. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed Xiong Kai's intention, but she didn't care. Since Xiong Kai wanted to commit suicide, she didn't have to do anything. Following Xiong Kai's fall, the curtains of this competition came to an end. Bailey Hongzhuang wins. The referee's voice rang out, but the crowd's expressions were extremely ugly. Who would have thought that such a dark horse would appear? Everyone had lost their bets. Only Bailey Hongzhuang had won. 100,000 gold coins. The odds were 1 to 10. That was 1 million gold coins. After seeing Su Tianlu come out to fight, a touch of excitement appeared in everyone's eyes. No matter what, at least Bailey Hongzhuang had an opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang still bet on herself to win, but this time only bet 50,000 gold coins. Previously, when she was fighting with Xiong Kai, she just wanted to create a momentum. Su Tianlu had no enmity with her, so she didn't need to put pressure on him. However, the crowd suddenly found that Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Tianlu's odds were the same. This meant that according to the data of the blood aura field, Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Tianlu should be equal in strength. Chapter 1034. After seeing the same odds, the practitioners who had originally decided to bet on Bailey Hongzhuang's victory hesitated for a moment. The odds of the Blood Chi Tower had always been particular. Many times, the strength of the two could be seen from the odds alone. However, the people of the Bloodchi Tower had clearly seen Bailey Hongzhuang's strength just now, and now they even set the same odds. This meant that they felt that the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Tianlu was equal. They did not have any impression of Su Tianlu and could not help but hesitate. Not long after, the crowd began to place their bets. There were people who bet on both of them winning. In this kind of situation where the odds were the same, it was completely a matter of luck. When Bailey Hongzhuang learned about the odds, she also looked at Su Tianlu in a higher light. It seemed that Su Tianlu's strength was not weak either. The competition begins. With the referee's order, Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Tianlu both took a step back and opened up the battle array. Su Tianlu clenched his fists and saluted to Bailey Hongzhuang, then took out his weapon. Seeing Su Tianlu's posture, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also showed a touch of surprise. She was just a little surprised by Su Tianlu's strength before, but now it seemed that Su Tianlu was not a practitioner from the grassroots. Perhaps this salute could be faked, but Su Tianlu's serious look and the temperament that he showed could not be faked. However, a 25-year-old who was still at the 5th level of the Red Realm was not considered strong in the forces. Bailey Hongzhuang also returned the salute and took out the colored glass sword. Her dark phoenix eyes flashed with seriousness. Since Su Tianlu was also from a big family, then Su Tianlu's strength was not comparable to that of a practitioner like Xiong Kai. Bailey Hongzhuang held the colored glass sword tightly, and the yuan qi in her body immediately surged into the colored glass sword. The glaze sword body was sparkling and translucent. It was beautiful and elegant, but the sharp light it emitted made everyone understand how sharp this sword was. Looking at the glass sword, everyone couldn't help but recall the scene of Xiong Kai's legs being cut off. Xiong Kai's reaction was simply amazing. Previously, they were too amazed by Bailey Hongzhuang's strength that they had overlooked this sword. Now that they thought about it, they didn't doubt that this sword was definitely a treasure. Ordinary swords would not be able to do this, so this sword would have to be at the level of a spiritual treasure. At the thought of this, everyone was envious. This Bailey Hongzhuang was simply a moving treasure trove in their eyes. Whether it was the sword or the money on Bailey Hongzhuang, it was a considerable amount of wealth. Not to mention anything else, just the 1 million gold coins that Bailey Hongzhuang had just received was already a lot. What's more, with the wealth that Bailey Hongzhuang had shown, the things in her Qingquan bag were definitely more than this. Once they killed Bailey Hongzhuang, then they would really be rich. For a time, many people began to make small calculations in their hearts. It must be said that in the Bloodland Abyss, there were the most vicious and evil people. They burned, killed, and robbed everything. This kind of killing and robbing was very normal. Although they were a little afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, they could not resist the temptation of this treasure. Chapter 1035. However, while everyone was secretly calculating in their hearts, Bailey Hongzhuang's attention was all on Su Tianlu. The battle between the two was on the verge of breaking out. Almost at the same time, the two suddenly closed the distance between them, and their long swords met. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of metal clashing instantly exploded. The two figures flew, and countless sword chi mixed with the collision of sparks burst out around them. The color glass sword in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was like a snake, and every move was sharp and aimed at the vital parts of Su Tianlu's body. Su Tianlu's reaction was also extremely sharp. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were extremely fast, he still nimbly dodged these attacks. Looking at the situation of Su Tianlu's attack, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Su Tianlu was not a grassroots cultivator, because his speed and reaction were obviously trained. However, even so, Su Tianlu was no match for her. Everyone only saw the two figures crisscrossing. Their movements were as fast as lightning, and the sword chi mixed with sparks seemed to be extremely intense. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Tianlu were evenly matched, everyone's eyes were filled with excitement. Only such an evenly matched battle could arouse their greatest interest, so this was a real game. Su Tianlu, kill her. Defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, come on, defeat Su Tianlu. Bailey Hongzhuang, you must win. Everyone shouted as they drank. They had already lost the previous round, and they only hoped that they could recover a little in this round. If they lost this battle, it would be one disaster after another. I've never heard of Su Tianlu before, but now it seems that Su Tianlu's strength is not weak. This Su Tianlu came to the Blood Abyss earlier than you, but he hasn't been to the Blood Qi Tower for a while. I believe that Su Tianlu will be able to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. I don't think so. Bailey Hongzhuang defeated Xiong Kai, who was at the 6th level of the Red Realm. Even if Su Tianlu is not weak, he is not Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. Everyone held on to their own opinions and waited for the final result. Bang! Following a side kick from Bailey Hongzhuang, Su Tianlu was sent flying by Bailey Hongzhuang's kick. He then crashed onto the edge of the ring. Su Tianlu wanted to stand up and fight back, but Bailey Hongzhuang's attack had already landed on Su Tianlu's neck. Looking at this scene, Su Tianlu's face turned pale. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so strong. He had not come to the Blood Qi Tower for a while, but the strength of the cultivators in the Blood Qi Tower had increased to such a level. Thinking of this, Su Tianlu directly closed his eyes. In this place, once he lost, only death would await him. At the same time, it was also because of this that every one of them was able to unleash their strongest combat strength in battle. Because no one could afford to pay the price of failure. However, just as Su Tianlu was waiting for the end of his life, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice suddenly rang out. Can you announce the result of this battle? The referee was stunned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. After confirming that what he heard was correct, he said, Bailey Hongzhuang wins. Bailey Hongzhuang put away her colored glaze sword. She only wanted to win this battle, not Su Tianlu's life. Chapter 1036. Everyone did not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang ended the battle like this. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang should have directly taken Su Tianlu's life, but this merciful situation was clearly different from what they had imagined. Su Tianlu could not help but open his eyes when he did not feel the pain he had expected. When he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to kill him, his eyes were filled with astonishment. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about everyone's astonishment and immediately prepared to walk to the counter to receive her gold coins. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward, Su Tianlu's voice suddenly rang out. Why? Su Tianlu could not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would choose to do this at such a time. This was really too surprising. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words surprised Su Tianlu even more. We are not enemies. Her voice fell, and Bailey Hongzhuang walked directly down the ring, leaving only Su Tianlu sitting in the ring in a daze. We're not enemies. Yes, they did not have any enmity, so they could not be considered enemies. However, after living in the bloody ground abyss for so long, he had long regarded everyone as an enemy. Not only him, but the other cultivators were also the same. Therefore, as soon as they walked onto the stage, they would think of ways to kill each other. At this moment, when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he actually had a feeling that it was too far away, but this seemed to be right. Not only Su Tianlu, but the other cultivators in the stands were also stunned after hearing this. Ever since they came to the bloody ground abyss, they had never heard of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Su Tianlu slowly stood up, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's slim back. A complicated and distant light flashed in his eyes. After Bailey Hongzhuang received the gold coin she won from a bet, she stood on the stage again under everyone's astonished gazes. Who's next? As soon as this was said, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, and the astonishment in their eyes grew stronger. Is Bailey Hongzhuang all right? Is she going to fight 3 rounds in a row? It's very likely that she wants to participate in the first level of the trial. So, she wants to accumulate a 10-win streak. Many cultivators immediately understood Bailey Hongzhuang's idea after seeing her actions. After all, everyone came to the Blood Qi Tower for the mysterious inheritance of the Blood Qi Tower. Unfortunately, Not to mention obtaining the inheritance, it was very difficult to obtain a 10-win streak. Go! This Bailey Hongzhuang doesn't want people's lives. Why wouldn't they dare? If you win, then Bailey Hongzhuang's Qinquan bag will be yours. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude towards Su Tianlu, everyone's thoughts changed a bit. If they were to go against Bailey Hongzhuang after leaving the Blood Qi Tower, they would probably have to face other opponents. If they were to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang in this arena, then everything would belong to them. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang had already fought twice in a row, so her battle strength had definitely declined. Perhaps they could really pick up a bargain. At the thought of this, a cultivator quickly walked onto the stage. He was willing to give a try. Chapter 1037. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang fought to her heart's content in the ring. Every time she defeated an opponent, she would move on to the next one without hesitation. She did not give herself a lot of time, so she had to increase her strength efficiently in the Bloodground Abyss. When she thought of Han Shieling, she believed that it would not be long before she encountered Han Shieling. Her strength could not be compared to Han Shieling the last time she met him, but she did not want the same thing to happen again the next time they met. Who's next? Me. Just as everyone had guessed, Bailey Hongzhuang did not want to take their lives. Now that they no longer had a psychological burden, they did not hesitate to challenge Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, the longer the battle went on, the more Bailey Hongzhuang would consume. She might lose to them at any time. However, the situation did not go as everyone wished because Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be tireless. No matter how they attacked, Bailey Hongzhuang could always suppress them steadily. As the battle went on, Bailey Hongzhuang's attacks became more and more simple. She would use a killing move as soon as she attacked. As a result, the duration of the battle became shorter and shorter. There were more and more cultivators in the stands. After hearing the news, more and more cultivators rushed to the Blood Qi Tower to witness Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. No one thought that the girl who had just come to the Bloodground Abyss would be so powerful. She did not attack at all, but once she attacked, she fought consecutively. However, after playing so many rounds in a row, no one was able to beat Bailey Hongzhuang. This scene made everyone extremely indignant. But no matter how angry they were, it was useless because Bailey Hongzhuang had proven everything with her strength. As Bailey Hongzhuang won more and more, many cultivators gradually accepted it. This was often the case in the world. Cultivators of similar strength often had the heart to compete, but when the opponent was too strong for them to catch up, they would choose to give up. Bailey Hongzhuang, 10 consecutive victories. Following the referee's words, the atmosphere in the spectator stands became stagnant. Initially, there were only 2 or 3 cultivators in the stands. Now, the entire stand were filled with cultivators. The first level of the Blood Aura Field had not seen such a lively scene for a long time. However, there was only one figure left in everyone's minds, Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang is too abnormal. It's not that I've never seen a cultivator with a 10-win streak, but it's the first time I've seen a cultivator with a streak of consecutive wins. This Bailey Hongzhuang is too awesome. This is the first time I've seen this. So many of you can't even defeat a woman. It's really embarrassing. Bailey Hongzhuang turned a deaf ear to everyone's discussion. After she took her gold coins from the counter, she immediately went to the place where the trial was held. After this round of competition, she finally had the chance to experience the trial. Naturally, she had to go and experience it first. Master, you're too powerful. 10 consecutive victories. These people are completely dumbfounded. Xiaohei's eyes flashed with excitement. Just looking at those guys had made it very unhappy. Now that it saw its master ruthlessly crush those guys, it felt refreshed and much happier. Chapter 1038. This is only the first level of the Blood Aura Field. My goal is to obtain the final inheritance of the Blood Aura Field. If I need to expend so much effort to pass the first level of the competition, I'll never be able to obtain the final inheritance of the blood aura field. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was calm. She did not care about her victory at all. Her objective in coming here was different from many of the other cultivators. She only wanted to increase her power. Besides, she has more inheritances than them. If she were to fail on the first level, that would be the strangest thing. Bailey Hongzhuang was not aware of the great shock she had brought to the crowd. When they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the training room after achieving 10 consecutive victories, the crowd was completely speechless. Could this be any more exaggerated? She still wants to participate in the training after achieving 10 consecutive victories. This was the physical strength of a demonic beast. The crowd shook their heads. They cannot be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang at all because the latter was simply too abnormal. She had refreshed their understanding of her. Many cultivators had given up immediately. There would always be some weirdos in this world who could not be compared to her. Bailey Hongzhuang pushed open the training room's door and saw a bright and spacious room. However, it was completely empty inside. There was nothing at all. Bailey Hongzhuang was astonished when she saw this. She did not know what the training room was, and Di Beichun had never told her either. However, from her point of view, this was only the first level of the Blood Aura Tower. The difficulty level of the training room should not be too high. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked in. Once she entered, the room's door slammed shut. Soon after, 4 bronze figures appeared in front of her. Without giving her any time to think, the 4 bronze figures immediately charged towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction was extremely quick. She immediately engaged the 4 bronze figures in battle. She believed that as long as she could defeat the 4 bronze figures, she would be able to pass the training room. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly discovered that the speed of these bronze men's attacks was extremely fast and ferocious, not giving her any time to release her martial skills. Not only that, the 4 bronze men worked together seamlessly, and she was somewhat inferior under the attacks of these 4 bronze men. Teamwork was a terrifying strength. Every attack from these 4 bronze men was very powerful. Once it landed on the body, not to mention the pain, if it landed on a weak spot, it was very likely that it would be seriously injured. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. She knew that it was not a good idea to continue dealing with these 4 bronze men. Because these bronze men weren't real people, they wouldn't feel tired and wouldn't be exhausted from fighting, but she was different. The longer the battle dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for her. The best way was to end the battle as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang focused her mind. At this point, she could only attack them one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure moved, and a torrential storm of attacks attacked one of the bronze men. As long as there was one less bronze man, their teamwork would be broken. This way, she would be able to win. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was being attacked by the 4 bronze men, they wanted to step forward to help. However, when they walked forward, they suddenly realized that there was a strange force that prevented them from approaching. What's going on? Chapter 1039. It seems that the trials of the Blood-Chi Tower have restricted our attacks. Only Master can resolve the battle herself. Xiao Bai spoke slowly as its large, sparkling eyes flickered with a wise light. They had also seen such restrictions before, so they were not surprised by this. However, the level of this restrictive spell was not low. The fact that such a restrictive spell had appeared in the Blood-Chi Tower proved that the Blood-Chi Tower was not simple. Master's battle powers are already very powerful. There's no need for us to interfere in this trial. Bai Shi appeared to be very calm. They had witnessed their master's battle powers. Even though the 4 bronze men had been very troublesome when they had first come into contact with them, their master had begun to turn the tables around. Bang! The sound of sonic boom suddenly rang out. The 3 beasts then realized that one of the bronze men had been smashed into pieces by Bailey Hongzhuang's fist. With one less bronze man, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes filled with confidence. When she had first come into contact with these bronze men, she had only felt that their powers were extremely abnormal. Furthermore, they could not feel any pain. Just this point alone had put her at a disadvantage. However, she also realized that fighting with these bronze men was a good opportunity to train her hand-to-hand combat skills. If these 4 bronze men were to be brought out, they would be extremely powerful, close combat experts. After understanding this, Bailey Hongzhuang was no longer in a hurry to win. The most important thing now was to improve her battle skills. As time slowly passed, the cultivators around the Blood Chi Tower began to make their own judgments. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the trial area, not a single cultivator had left. This was because they wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to pass the trial. If Bailey Hongzhuang had passed the trial after achieving 10 consecutive victories, it would be truly shocking. However, everyone present hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to pass the trial. This would be a great consolation to them. From what I can see, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely not be able to pass the trial. So much time has passed, yet she still hasn't appeared. She must have failed and is too embarrassed to show herself. That's right. How difficult is it to pass the trial in one go? Bailey Hongzhuang is really indulging in fantasy. Just you wait. There will be a joke to watch in a while. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had not come out for a long time, everyone was even more convinced that their judgment was not wrong. After all, they had seen cultivators who had passed this trial before. If they had passed smoothly, they would not have needed such a long time. For a time, everyone once again returned to their previous lazy and unrestrained appearance. However, no one went up to the arena to fight again. Although they were doing their own things and pretending to be indifferent, but their gazes still fell on the entrance of the training area from time to time, wanting to know when Bailey Hongzhuang would come out. This was probably the first time in a long time that so many cultivators had gathered in the Blood Chi field, waiting to know the results of a cultivator's trial. However, if everyone knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was only using the bronze men as practice targets in the training area, they would probably faint. Bailey Hongzhuang had completely treated the bronze men as practice targets. From the way the bronze men fought, she had gained a certain amount of inspiration. After being inspired, she immediately used it. However, the power she used wasn't very strong, so it didn't completely destroy the bronze man. Chapter 1040. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the trial area, she suddenly realized that everyone's eyes were on her. According to her theory, she had stayed in the trial area for quite a long time. Furthermore, everyone had noticed her as soon as she walked out. Could it be that these people were waiting to know the results of her trial? When this thought surfaced in her mind, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and ignored it. She could not think too highly of herself. She had successfully passed the first level of the trial today. Tomorrow, she would set off for the second level. Bailey Hongzhuang was in an extremely good mood at the thought of this. The corners of her lips slowly curled into a faint smile as she walked out of the Blood Chi Tower. She had achieved her goal for the day, so there was no need for her to stay here any longer. She might as well go back and have a good rest before continuing to work hard tomorrow. Relaxation with moderation was her way of cultivation. When the crowd saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had left the Blood Chi Tower without saying a word, they were rather puzzled. However, they would not show their curiosity in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, so everyone went about their own business. It was only after Bailey Hongzhuang had left that the crowd burst into an uproar. Even though they had always been cold and heartless living in the Bloodground Abyss, they were much more familiar with this kind of situation. Bailey Hongzhuang must have failed. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left with her tail between her legs. That's not necessarily true. I think she was in a good mood when she left. In the history of this trial area, no one has ever stayed in there for so long. Instantly, some cultivators had already walked towards the trial area. Every time someone passed the trial, their name would appear on the black stone pillar in the trial area. Therefore, they only needed to take a look to know the results. When the cultivators who had gone to check the results saw the shining words on the black stone pillar, Bailey Hongzhuang, they were completely speechless. Hey, tell me what the results are. The cultivators at the spectators' stand could not help but ask when they saw that the cultivators who had gone to check the results did not react. They were anxious to know the final results. Hearing the crowd's questions, the cultivators who were in a daze finally reacted. They immediately turned around and said to the crowd, "She passed." As soon as they said that, the atmosphere on the first level of the Blood Chi Tower froze for a moment. Many cultivators could not believe what they had just heard and immediately walked towards the trial area. However, that shining name clearly fell into everyone's eyes, clearly telling them that all of this was real. Heavens, this is too much. Where the hell did this pervert come from? I just don't understand how she managed to stay in the trial for so long. Everyone was speechless. Today, Bailey Hongzhuang had completely become the center of attention. Because it was too much a blow, some cultivators could not help but sigh with emotion. Fortunately, they had not offended Bailey Hongzhuang earlier. Otherwise, they would have been really unlucky. Come to think of it, Song Mingjie and Xiong Kai were really unlucky. If they had known that Bailey Hongzhuang was so powerful, they would not have chosen to make an enemy out of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1041. Bailey Hongzhuang had just walked out of the Blood Chi Tower when she realized that Di Beichun was waiting for her not far away. Joy appeared on her pretty face as she immediately walked up to Di Beichun. "Why did you come to pick me up today?" Yesterday, Di Beichun had directly waited for her at the inn. His actions today were obviously a little different. Di Beichun smiled faintly as his large hand grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. "Your performance today was very amazing." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun in surprise. It turned out that Di Beichun knew about her situation in the Blood Chi Tower. However, she didn't find any trace of Di Beichun in the Blood Chi Tower. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Di Beichun only chuckled but didn't explain. How important was Hongzhuang in his heart? He couldn't be at ease to let Hongzhuang train by herself. He had to ensure that if Hongzhuang was in danger, he would be the first to appear in front of Hongzhuang. Only then could he be at ease. "Let's go back to the inn to rest first. You've used up a lot of energy today." Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly and immediately walked in the direction of the inn with Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes slightly and looked at Di Beichun's sculpture-like handsome side profile. Her heart was filled with a trace of emotion. When she first saw Di Beichun, she didn't realize it. However, when she heard that Di Beichun was concerned about her consumption of energy, she understood. Di Beichun specially came to pick her up at this moment. He must be worried that someone would attack her on the way here. After all, she had expended a lot of energy in the Blood Chi Tower, and many people wanted to attack her. She had made a lot of money in the Blood Chi Tower today. As long as they killed her, they would be able to get all the money. She had already thought of this point. In the past, she had roamed the Jianghu for many years, so she already had her own plans for this kind of thing. Moreover, as an alchemist, she never lacked medicinal pills. Even if her origin energy was greatly depleted, she only needed to replenish some origin energy, and it would be enough. However, she understood how much Di Beichun cared about her. Even though he knew that she had her own ways, he still chose to come and pick her up. Perhaps this was the only way Di Beichun could feel at ease. Along the way, everyone looked at the immortal couple, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, and their hearts were filled with amazement. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had not been in the Bloodground Abyss for long, many people had an impression of them. This was because their appearances were simply too outstanding. It was hard not to have an impression of them. Originally, there were many people who had bad intentions towards them. However, Di Beichun had easily taken Bai Feng's life, so they did not dare to act rashly. Offending the strong was never a wise decision. The two of them successfully returned to the inn. Di Beichun had also prepared a delicious meal for Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the food in front of her, and a glimmer of light appeared in her eyes. "You went there again today?" She could recognize that the food was also demonic beast meat. There was no demonic beast meat for sale near the Blood Chi Tower. There was only the place where Di Beichun had brought her last time. Di Beichun nodded slightly. You can nourish yourself in the process of cultivation. It will be of great help to your cultivation. Chapter 1042. Bailey Hongzhuang was touched as she stared at the piping hot dishes in front of her. Given Di Beichun's status, he had actually prepared all these for her. Those who knew Di Beichun would probably not believe it. Beichun, thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her almond-shaped eyes. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude, including everything Di Beichun had done for her. Silly girl. Di Beichun chuckled and reached out to pull Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. There's never a need for thanks between us. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled blissfully as she felt Di Beichun's warm embrace. Even though the Bloodland Abyss was filled with danger and coldness, her feelings for Di Beichun were even deeper in this environment. You can't look. Xiaohei reached out to cover Baisher's eyes. Baisher was still so small, and this scene did not suit him. You can't look either. Just as Xiaohei was feeling smug, Xiaobai reached out to cover Xiaohei's eyes. This warm and shy situation was actually pretty good. Baisher was stunned when he was suddenly blindfolded. He immediately reached out to cover Xiaohei's eyes as well. Instantly, the three beasts formed a circle and none of them let go. When Bailey Hongzhuang left Di Beichun's embrace, she looked at the three beasts who had formed a circle and could not help but smile. Initially, the three beasts had looked like a ball. Now that they had formed a circle, they looked like an even bigger ball of fur. Two of them were white and one was black. It was truly hilarious. When she saw that none of the three beasts were willing to let go, Bailey Hongzhuang said, "If you don't come now, I'll finish everything first." As soon as he said that, the three beasties immediately loosened their grip. Nothing could resist the temptation of delicious food. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other when they saw the three beasts jumping onto the table and eating. Their smiles deepened. "I plan to go to the second level tomorrow," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Di Beichun nodded slightly. The rules for the first three levels are the same. The fourth level will only have trials, and there's no need for an arena competition. Bailey Hongzhuang tilted her head and looked at Di Beichun. Most of the cultivators on the first floor are here to watch the show. The cultivators on the second and third floor should be here for the inheritance, right? She felt that most of the cultivators on the first floor were gambling. Although there were some cultivators who were serious about the competition, most of them looked relaxed and lazy. They were not serious enough. Di Beichun smiled faintly. In fact, many cultivators in the Blood Chi Tower are just enjoying the process of violent competition. They express their emotions through the arena competition. It's not that there are no cultivators who really want to obtain the inheritance, but the number is extremely small. That's because there are too few people who have obtained the inheritance in the history of the Blood Chi Tower. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Because the possibility of obtaining the inheritance was too small, many cultivators chose to give up directly. The existence of the arena competition attracted many cultivators, so it became a place where everyone gathered. Then why do you believe that I can obtain the inheritance? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes. Logically speaking, the possibility of obtaining the inheritance was so small that Di Beichun would not believe it. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes. Her gaze fell on Di Beichun. Chapter 1043. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Di Beichun smiled faintly and nodded. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes shone brighter, revealing a trace of surprise. She had heard that the chances of obtaining the inheritance were very small. She had never thought that Di Beichun would be one of the recipients. When did you obtain it? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. It was no wonder that Di Beichun could possess such strength at such a young age. His master had also helped him a lot, but the most important thing was Di Beichun's hard work. A few years ago, Di Beichun's expression was gentle and elegant. Although obtaining the inheritance is very difficult, as long as it's possible, you can try. After obtaining the blood aura field, I found that it was very useful in battle. It can even resist pressure. It can be called a powerful weapon. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Just by hearing the name of the blood aura field, she understood how amazing it was. Originally, she thought that obtaining the inheritance was very far away. She had never thought that there would be a successful example by her side. Then, she had to work harder. Others were in the blood aura tower to enjoy the process of the challenge tournament, but she was not interested in the challenge tournament. She was only interested in the inheritance. What are the trials on the next few levels? Bailey Hongzhuang asked curiously. She believed that the challenge tournament was definitely not the reason that stopped everyone's progress. It was the trials that were difficult for everyone. The trials of the first 3 levels are all to deal with the bronze men. With each level up, the number of bronze men will double. As for the trials that appear on the last 6 levels, it varies from person to person. Everyone's trials are different. In comparison, the first level is relatively easy, but the last level is the most difficult. Many cultivators fail at the last level. As long as you can pass the last level, you can obtain the inheritance. The trials vary from person to person. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with astonishment. She felt that this blood-refining tower was really interesting. The trial actually had different effects depending on the person. This was really not simple. This meant that the blood-refining tower would know everything about them and set up their weaknesses. In this way, the difficulty of success would be greatly increased. If it was someone else who heard of this trial, they might feel that it was too difficult. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was very calm. Every inheritance was difficult to obtain. If one wanted to obtain it, they naturally had to put in a certain amount of effort and pay a certain price. No matter what, this was an excellent trial. She believed that through this, her strength would increase by quite a bit. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Only the 2 of them had come to the Bloodground Abyss, so who would be looking for them? Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Di Beichen's lips curled into a reassuring smile. Hey Mu. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Hey Mu had always been by Di Beichen's side. Last time, Di Beichen had asked He Mu to return to Tiangang's sect to express his attitude to Han Xiling. After that, He Mu had never returned. Today, He Mu had finally returned. However, no one knew what kind of news he would bring back. The door opened, and He Mu walked in without any surprise. Young master, Di Beichen nodded slightly. Come in. Chapter 1044. Hearing how He Mu addressed her, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He Mu had never addressed her this way before. She subconsciously wanted to deny it, but thinking carefully, Di Beichen was He Mu's young master. Then wouldn't she be the young master's wife? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was in a dilemma, Di Beichen patted He Mu's shoulder and gave him a look of approval. Usually, He Mu had always been inarticulate, but now he was smart. He was very satisfied with this form of address. He Mu noticed Di Beichen's gaze, and a bashful smile appeared on his face. After he returned this time, he thought for a long time. In the past, he had always been by young master's side, but since a while ago, young master rarely allowed him to follow by his side. Later on, after he thought about it and his friend's advice, he felt that it must be because he was too insensible, which was why young master disliked him. So, after he returned this time, he had already made up his mind. As expected, after he said that, young master finally showed an expression of approval. At this moment, He Mu finally saw hope. Young master, the matter you asked me to do this time. He Mu looked up at Di Beichen. He came here today to report the results, but he didn't know that Miss Bailey was here, so he didn't know if he should continue. Looking at He Mu's expression, Di Beichen was very indifferent. He waved his hand. Speak. He and Hongzhuang were already connected, and there was no need for secrets between them, so there was no need to guard against these things. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at He Mu with interest, not knowing what news He Mu brought back this time. I told Miss Han your intentions, but Miss Han said she didn't do anything. He Mu frowned. Although he went to express his young master's attitude, Miss Han's innocent and pitiful look made him really not know what to do. Young master, since Miss Han said so, I can't ask anymore. Moo was a little helpless. This kind of thing should have been done by the young master himself, but the young master wholeheartedly wanted to stay by Miss Bailey's side. That was why the young master wanted him to express his attitude. He could understand. In the past, he also thought that the young lord had feelings for Miss Han because among all the women, the young lord treated Miss Han the best. Only after Miss Bailey appeared did he realize that the young master was completely different from how he used to be. It was because of this that he understood how important Miss Bailey was to the young master. Hearing this, Deep Baichin nodded slightly. I understand. Actually, the answer was no longer important to him. From the last time they encountered the situation in Chishui City, he already understood Han Shiling's attitude. He had known Han Shiling for so long, but he never knew that Han Shiling had so many thoughts behind his arrogant appearance. Although he didn't want to come to this step, if Han Shiling harmed Hong Zhuang again or destroyed his relationship with Hong Zhuang, he wouldn't sit idly by. He should protect his own woman. He was very clear in his heart that the person he loved the most in this life was Bailey Hong Zhuang. Seeing Deep Baichin's attitude, Moo couldn't help but explain. Young master, I express your attitude very clearly. Compared to Han Shiling and Bailey Hong Zhuang, Moo stood on Bailey Hong Zhuang's side. Chapter 1045. In his opinion, Han Shiling was indeed good to the young lord in the past. When the young lord fell into the hands of the Fengbo king, Han Shiling still paid a lot of attention to the young lord. However, with Han Shiling's position in the Tiangang sect, as long as she did her best to help the young lord's situation would be better and he wouldn't even need to come to Fengbo country. What's more, in the past 3 years, Han Shiling had only brought a few words, but had never come to see the young master. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Han Shiling was already affectionate and loyal to the young lord, but in his opinion, this wasn't sincere enough. If the young lord couldn't stand up, if the young lord became a cripple, he believed that Han Shiling would definitely ignore it. The one who really helped the young lord stand up was Bailey Hong Zhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hong Zhuang's help, the young lord would probably still have that disappointed look in his eyes. Just this point alone made him unspeakably grateful to Bailey Hong Zhuang. He had followed the young lord since he was young and had long regarded the young lord as the closest person. Therefore, Bailey Hong Zhuang was his benefactor. I understand. Deep Baichin smiled faintly and patted Moo's shoulder. We will be staying in the Bloodground Abyss for a few days. You can stay next door. Although Moo had always been his secret guard, he didn't need to care about this in the Bloodground Abyss. Hearing Deep Baichin's words, Moo's eyes flashed with joy. The young lord finally allowed him to follow by his side again. Thinking of this, Moo was even more certain that the reason why the young lord disliked him previously was because he didn't know how to read the mood. This was good. Young lord, then I will leave first. Deep Baichin nodded and waved his hand. Go. Moo glanced at Bailey Hong Zhuang again. Young madam, I will leave first. Bailey Hong Zhuang looked at Moo helplessly. This Moo was really diligent in calling her young madam now. Looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang's shy and helpless expression, Deep Baichin chuckled, a sly smile in his eyes. Wife, Moo is talking to you. Why aren't you answering? Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang glared at Deep Baichin. This guy is doing this on purpose. Huh? Deep Baichin laughed out loud. His wife was not afraid of anything, but she was shy. She was really too cute. Seeing that the atmosphere between Deep Baichin and Bailey Hong Zhuang was so harmonious, Moo did not delay any longer and immediately left the room. Bailey Hong Zhuang had already finished eating. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Deep Baichin. You are doing this on purpose. Deep Baichin shrugged his shoulders calmly. His hands encircled Bailey Hong Zhuang in his embrace. His voice was low and bewitching. Moo is right. You're my wife. Feeling Deep Baichin's warm breath and his ambiguous words, Bailey Hong Zhuang's cheeks blushed. Since you have boarded this pirate ship, don't think of running away in the future. Di Baichen's heart heated up. Bailey Hongzhuang's blushing cheeks were really too charming. That's not necessarily true. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head, not to be outdone. Every time she was teased by Di Baichen like this, she was going to make a comeback. In the next moment, Di Baichen lowered his head and directly covered Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips. This kiss was gentle, full of tenderness, full of deep affection. Tossing and turning, it was also ecstatic. Chapter 1046. The next day, when Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the Blood Tower, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang at the same time. They were completely speechless at this freak. She had actually passed the trial after 10 consecutive victories. Was she trying to kill them? In just one night, Bailey Hongzhuang's reputation had spread throughout the Bloodground Abyss. Although there were many cultivators who had passed the first level of the Bloodground Abyss, there were very few who could do what Bailey Hongzhuang had done. For a moment, many cultivators decided to avoid people like Bailey Hongzhuang if they could. At the very least, they were not confident that they could pass the trial after 10 consecutive victories. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the blood refining pagoda, there was a moment of silence in the lobby. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent and distant in the face of everyone's gazes. She walked to the second level on her own. She no longer needed to stay on the first level. Everyone on the first level heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang leave. Bailey Hongzhuang was just too freakish. It was extremely good that she went to the second level as soon as possible. Chapter 1047. Slowly walking forward, Bailey Hongzhuang found a seat on the spectator stand and sat down. "Miss, do you want a drink?" As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang sat down, a female attendant walked to Bailey Hongzhuang and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a sweet smile. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and looked at the female attendant. In the Blood-Chi Tower, the female attendant had a seductive charm no matter if it was the way she walked or the way she acted. It was really irresistible to men. Noticing that the surrounding cultivators were holding a wine glass, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "Okay." The female attendant immediately handed the wine glass to Bailey Hongzhuang, and Bailey Hongzhuang placed it aside. She was not interested in fine wine, only the arena. On the arena, two cultivators were fighting to their heart's content. Back and forth, they were sweating profusely. Bailey Hongzhuang keenly noticed that the cultivators on the second floor were much stronger than the cultivators on the first floor. Moreover, their murderous aura was much denser. After all, it was not easy to obtain 10 consecutive victories on the first floor. This at least proved that they had killed 10 people to reach the second floor. Therefore, the murderous aura would be stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferently at the battle in the ring. She had already made a decision. As long as this match was over, she would go on stage. She was afraid that the later trials would take a lot of time, so she was not willing to waste too much time here. Moreover, her philosophy was incompatible with the cultivators here, so it was better to end the battle earlier. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was fighting, a woman walked in front of her. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and saw a woman in a bright red dress. The woman was about 23 years old. She had charming eyes and a charming posture. The neckline of the bright red dress was very low. As long as one paid a little attention, one could find her towering infinite charm. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly raised. She already had a certain understanding of the unrestrained environment of the Bloodground Abyss. Just by looking at the appearance of this woman, she knew that this woman must have infinite charm in this Blood-Chi Tower, because she had already felt that many people's eyes fell on this woman. "Bailey Hongzhuang, I heard that you were very arrogant." The woman's lips evoked a sarcastic smile, but her smile was very skillful, so she still looked charming. As soon as the woman's words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang had already realized that this woman came to provoke her. For a while, everyone's eyes gathered on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Bloody Rose had always been at the second floor of the Blood Chi Tower. How many men had fallen under her pomegranate skirt? At this moment, Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang stood together. The combination of white and red really made people's eyes light up. Bailey Hongzhuang was indifferent, cold, noble, and alienated. It was a kind of feeling that made people yearn for infinitely. Many people want to know that Bailey Hongzhuang was so warm under this indifferent mask. Bloody Rose had always been enthusiastic. She was even more arrogant and bold in doing things. That charming charm was unforgettable for men. At this moment, the two people stood together, two charming and pure faces intertwined, which really made people yearn for it. In terms of appearance and temperament, Bloody Rose could not compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. However, this kind of charm that Bloody Rose had could be called men's favorite. What does it have to do with you? Chapter 1048. She would never be polite to people who took the initiative to provoke her. She didn't care why the woman came to trouble her. Since she was an enemy, there was no need to talk nonsense. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent attitude, Bloody Rose was stunned for a moment, and then the corners of her mouth opened again with a rich smile. You sure have guts. Even if it was a provocation, Bloody Rose's words were still full of charm, but there was a flash of resentment in the depths of her eyes. Originally, when she heard that a peerless beauty appeared on the first floor, she was also very curious. You know, from the moment she appeared in the Blood Tower, she was called a peerless beauty by the people here. Although there were many women in the Bloodland Abyss, none of them could compare with her. She didn't expect that with the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang today, the eyes of all the practitioners on the second floor of the Blood Tower fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, which made her, who had always been the center of attention of all men, a little uncomfortable. However, she could see a trace of pride and purity from Bailey Hongzhuang, which was what she didn't have and most envied. Therefore, she was very unhappy to see Bailey Hongzhuang. Put away your tricks. It works on men. I'm not interested. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. The charm of the woman's every move was undoubtedly to arouse the desire of the men present. But as a woman, she had no feeling at all. It was naturally good to be a sexy beauty, but she didn't think Bloody Rose was happy to be a promiscuous woman here. Even if she was pursued by men here, it was just the men's sweet words, which had no meaning at all. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Bloody Rose's face became ugly for a moment. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to speak so ruthlessly, revealing everything in one sentence. Huh, Bloody Rose chuckled, but the smile didn't have any warmth. Bailey Hongzhuang, this is your first time in the Bloodground Abyss. Let me tell you from experience that being too arrogant here is not good for you. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bloody Rose lazily. Cut the crap. What do you want to tell me? She was just watching the challenge tournament in the stands. As a result, this woman had been talking to her since she came. The problem was that Bloody Rose had said so many harsh words without telling her real purpose. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's words were so harsh, Bloody Rose looked a little ugly. She wanted to show off her ability in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, but Bailey Hongzhuang was so stubborn that she didn't know what to say for a while. When everyone saw the conflict between Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes were filled with curiosity. Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang are at odds. It seems that Bloody Rose is afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang will affect her status. Yes, over the years, Bloody Rose has always been the first beauty here. Bailey Hongzhuang is so outstanding that she even faintly overshadowed her limelight. It's normal for her to be dissatisfied. The characteristics of these two women are completely different, but if they really fight, I'm very curious about the result. Everyone drank and watched the play. The challenge tournament was good, and the confrontation between Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang was even better. Chapter 1049. I want you to get out of the Blood Chi Tower. Bloody Rose chuckled, but there was a cold arc in her eyes. She was full of disgust for Bailey Hongzhuang in any way. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bloody Rose as if she was looking at an idiot. She didn't understand why this woman had inexplicably appeared and said something to her. She even told her to leave the Blood Chi Tower. What was she relying on? In the Blood Chi field, except for the arena, no one could fight in other places. Therefore, what Bloody Rose said would not work at all. What's more, even if Bloody Rose went to the arena with her, it would be to her liking. After all, she came to the second floor of the Blood Chi Tower today for the challenge tournament. Since Bloody Rose wanted to go to the arena, she could accompany her directly. Challenge tournament? Bailey Hongzhuang looked calm. No problem. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bloody Rose suddenly laughed, shaking with laughter. She glanced at the practitioners around her with infinite amorous feelings. I, Bloody Rose, want you to get out of the Blood Chi field. Do I need to do it myself? It's stupid for a woman to rely on herself for everything. I only need to say a word, and these men will fight for me. Can you do it? Looking at Bloody Rose's complacent look, Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Indeed, many men seemed to be waiting for Bloody Rose's call. After seeing Bloody Rose's amorous appearance, the other women present could not help but feel a trace of envy in their hearts. In this Blood Chi field, the most famous woman was Bloody Rose. However, they could not compare with Bloody Rose's amorous feelings at all. She had always been the focus of everyone here. However, in the face of Bloody Rose's provocation, Bailey Hongzhuang did not take it to heart at all. You let others work for you. Naturally, you have to pay something. I can do it, but I don't want to pay. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. The world had always been so fair. She knew very well why these men were willing to work for Bloody Rose. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, but she wasn't willing to do it. Most importantly, she never felt that there was anything wrong with relying on her own strength. On the contrary, relying on her own strength was the best. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bloody Rose was stunned for a moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's words directly hit the point. Indeed, she had lived in the blood-ground abyss for so long, so she was very familiar with these things. It was precisely because of this that she hated Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogance and purity. She found her to be an eyesore. Once upon a time, she was also such a person. But now everything had changed. She came to the blood-ground abyss because all the women here were the same as her. Not only that, all the women here envied her. However, she actually envied Bailey Hongzhuang. Bloody Rose was stunned for a short moment. Soon, she returned to her usual enchanting appearance. Don't be so proud of yourself. You just don't have that kind of ability. Bloody Rose smiled enchantingly and looked at the surrounding cultivators. Who is willing to compete with Bailey Hongzhuang for me? As soon as the voice came out, the eyes of all the cultivators present were filled with excitement. Bloody Rose, I'll help you. Where did this kid come from? How can Bloody Rose need your help? I'll do it. Chapter 1050. Almost at the same time, all the men present stood up and expressed their willingness to work for the Bloody Rose, because no one could stop the style of the Bloody Rose. But over the years, it was more and more difficult to gain the favor of the Bloody Rose. Now that the Bloody Rose spoke again, they naturally could not miss this opportunity. After seeing this scene, the women on the second floor of the Blood Tower also showed envious expressions. If one day they could be admired by all men like the Bloody Rose, that would be their biggest dream. The Bloody Rose looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with an enchanting smile, and her raised eyebrows revealed an enchanting posture. Now, do you understand? This is the gap between you and me. The Bloody Rose raised her chin, and her posture was very proud. This was her charm. In the Blood Tower, she was the most charming woman, and no one could compare with her. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was a threat to her position. Towards women she didn't like, she was never polite. She would destroy all the women who were better than herself. Because she was the best. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the arrogant Bloody Rose in front of her, and a sneer appeared on her lips. Everyone had their own pursuits. She admitted that the Bloody Rose was indeed very charming, but this could not make her envious at all. On the contrary, She felt that such a bloody rose was ridiculous and pitiful. What was more, the bloody rose came to trouble her, so she naturally would not be polite. On the first floor of the Blood Tower, she saw a group of crazy men, and on the second floor of the Blood Tower, she saw a group of crazy women. On this kind of thing, she was not willing to argue with the bloody rose, because the bloody rose had already been blinded and could not see anything else. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not say more, the bloody rose only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was afraid of her, and she was more proud. She immediately chuckled and said, "Is there anyone here who is willing to fight for Bailey Hongzhuang?" The bloody rose was sure that in front of her, no man would stand up for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, as soon as the bloody rose's voice came out, a low and magnetic voice sounded. Me. His deep and magnetic voice was filled with charm and dominance. Just listening to this voice was unforgettable. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice at the same time. They wanted to see who was the one who said that. There was a slight anger in the eyes of Bloody Rose. She was in a bad mood. She wanted to see who dared to disrespect her. However, when Bloody Rose saw the person clearly, she was absent-minded for a moment. She boasted that she had seen many men in her life, but this was the first time she had seen such a noble and elegant man. He was like a blazing sun, attracting everyone's attention the moment he appeared, becoming the focus of everyone's attention. His nobility seemed to be innate. Just by standing there, it was as if he was high up and looked down on everything. She had never seen such a noble and extraordinary man. Just one look was enough to make people want to submit to him. Di Beichun walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang and stood still. He put one hand directly on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and said, "I will fight for her." A sharp light flashed through the deep and charming eyes. This woman dared to make sarcastic remarks about his wife. Chapter 10:51. After everyone saw Di Beichun appear, all the practitioners on the second floor of the Blood Tower were stunned for a moment. Just by looking at this man's temperament, they could feel that this man was extraordinary. This was an innate temperament, which could not be imitated by others. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun beside her in surprise. She did not expect that Di Beichun would suddenly appear. It was really beyond her expectation. Di Beichun looked at the doubt in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, and the corners of his mouth raised in an evil and perfect arc. He understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking. Although he had said that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't in danger, he wouldn't make a move. However, the situation now was different. The Bloody Rose was laughing at his wife's lack of charm. At this time, as her husband, if he did not stand up, wouldn't he allow other women to bully his wife? Although he knew that with Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament, she wouldn't take it to heart. However, just because Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care, it didn't mean that he didn't care. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised, she also knew that Di Beichun was standing up for her. Her beautiful and refined face slowly bloomed with a smile. This man really could not bear to see her suffer any grievances. At the moment when Bailey Hongzhuang showed a smile, the men present all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with infatuation. They had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang smile. Her previous cold appearance made them feel holy, which could only be seen from a distance and could not be touched. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was like a melting snow mountain with a shocking beauty. If Bailey Hongzhuang's previous frosty appearance was similar to the amorous feelings of the Bloody Rose in their eyes, now Bailey Hongzhuang's sweet smile had completely defeated the Bloody Rose. Such a Bloody Rose could not be compared with Bailey Hongzhuang at all, because the charm could be practiced, but the appearance and temperament could not be imitated. My God, I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so beautiful when she smiles. My heart is melting. Who is this man? Bailey Hongzhuang let him hold her. If I had known this, I would have been the first to answer when the Bloody Rose asked. I heard that this man and Bailey Hongzhuang know each other. He should be Bailey Hongzhuang's lover. Yesterday, Bailey Hongzhuang made too much noise on the first floor of the Blood Tower, so when she left, there were many practitioners' attention. Everyone noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the inn with a man. Obviously, that man should be the man in front of them. After knowing the relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, everyone was a little envious. But they had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were a match made in heaven. The Bloody Rose looked at the handsome man in front of her in a daze. She only felt that her heart, which had not beat for so many years, beat again after seeing this man. This man seemed to have the power to capture people's souls. Even if he just looked at her indifferently, she could not control her heartbeat. However, after seeing Di Beichun's gentle and doting smile to Bailey Hongzhuang, a strong jealousy emerged in her eyes. Chapter 1052. Although her heart had been swept by this jealousy, Bloody Rose also recovered her original look in a very short time. She asked herself that Bailey Hongzhuang's style couldn't be compared with hers at all. Only she was a woman who could really make a man want and be unable to give up. As long as she played a little trick, this man would definitely fall under her pomegranate skirt. Over the years, such examples were too numerous to mention. She had absolute confidence in herself. The next moment, Bloody Rose directly approached Di Beichun. The tempting plump directly touched Di Beichun's arm. Her smile was enchanting and charming. "Young master, how should I address you?" Bloody Rose's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. She looked at Di Beichun with a blurred look. The seduction in her look was obvious. It was rare to see such a tempting man. She would never give up. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bloody Rose like this. Her expression also changed a little. Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of coldness. She suddenly felt that her disgust for Bloody Rose had increased a level. Di Beichun frowned slightly. Bloody Rose's posture was also beyond his expectation. There was an unconcealable disgust in his eyes. Perhaps for other men, Bloody Rose's posture was called amorous. But for him, except for his wife, all other women were nothingness. Just as Di Beichun was about to break away from Bloody Rose, Bailey Hongzhuang made a move that surprised people. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly pulled out the hairpin in her hair. Her hair fell down in an instant, making her, who was originally arrogant and indifferent, have a charming woman's posture. Her beautiful face was filled with an enchanting and charming smile. Bailey Hongzhuang also held Di Beichun's shoulder. Her blurred eyes were full of infinite amorous feelings. Everyone was surprised to find that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang removed that layer of unapproachable coldness, even if she didn't do anything, she was still a seductive beauty, making it impossible for people to turn their eyes away. Her every move was full of infinite amorous feelings, mixed with purity and charm, coldness and heat. This contradictory and extreme temperament appeared on her at the same time, making everyone realize what was called real charm. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang made a bold move in front of everyone. She suddenly stood on tiptoe, her red lips close to Di Beichun's ear, and gently breathed. "Am I charming, or is she charming?" Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's seductive appearance, Di Beichun's eyes also flashed a hidden desire. He had always been a person with strong self-control, but in the face of Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt that all his self-control was collapsing. This woman was born to be his nemesis. All the men present unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Di Beichun didn't need to answer. Everyone could help him answer. My God, this Bailey Hongzhuang is simply a seductress. I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a side. Bloody Rose can't be compared with Bailey Hongzhuang at all. If I can have such a woman, it's worth it to live a few decades less. Everyone looked at Di Beichun enviously. This woman was the real stunner. Chapter 1053. Heimu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. This young master's wife was too powerful. With the young master's wife's usual shy and indifferent character, such a thing was completely impossible. He didn't expect that this time, under the provocation of Bloody Rose, She really went all out. Not to mention the young master. He was also blushing and his heart was beating fast. As for Bloody Rose, this kind of woman was not at the same level as the young master's wife at all. No matter from which point of view, the young master's wife was really charming and hard to resist. Over the years, he had seen a lot of famous ladies around the young master, but he swore that he thought the most charming woman was the young master's wife. Even if everyone said that Han Shieling was outstanding and was an outstanding figure among the young generation of women, he felt that the young master's wife was not as famous as Han Shieling because the young master's wife had not yet appeared in the eyes of others. When the young master brought the young master's wife back to Tiangang, he believed that many people would stand on the side of the young master's wife. Bloody Rose looked at Bailey Hongzhuang like this and was also stunned. It was reasonable to say that with Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament, it should be impossible to do such a thing, but Bailey Hongzhuang did it. In fact, her charm was not inferior to hers at all. She knew that her appearance was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang. She thought that she could compete with Bailey Hongzhuang by relying on her charm, but now after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang like this, she understood that she could not compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichun did not hesitate to push away Bloody Rose with disgust and contempt. If he had not come to the Bloodland Abyss, he would not have seen this kind of woman at all. His eyes did not even stay on Bloody Rose for a moment. Di Beichun's attention was all on his little goblin. He lowered his voice and said in Bailey Hongzhuang's ear, "Wife, you seduce your husband like this. Are you hinting something to your husband?" Listening to Di Beichun's ambiguous and suggestive words, Bailey Hongzhuang's cheeks were quickly covered with a blush, and she glanced at Di Beichun. "You think too much." However, even if Bailey Hongzhuang just glanced at Di Beichun casually, in Di Beichun's eyes were full of infinite flirtatious feelings. His wife, no matter what she did, could completely attract his heart. The whole second floor of the Bloodland Tower became quiet, and everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Obviously, these two people had become the focus of attention here, and Di Beichun had become the object of envy of all the men present. "I heard that you want to find someone to compete with my wife." Di Beichun hugged Bailey Hongzhuang's slender waist, domineeringly declaring his identity, and his cold eyes fell on Bloody Rose. This woman humiliated his wife in such a way, but in the end, he was defeated. Listening to Di Beichun's words, Bloody Rose was furious. She finally fell in love with a man after so many years, but now this man disdained her. What was more infuriating was that this man turned out to be Bailey Hongzhuang's husband. Thinking of this, Bloody Rose's eyes flashed with anger and determination. She immediately stood up and said to the people present, "Whoever helps me win this game, I will be his tonight." Chapter 1054. From a situation of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, it was obvious that these two people were not very easy to deal with. It would be difficult to get Bailey Hongzhuang. Although the Blood Rose couldn't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, compared to other women, this Blood Rose was also a rare top-quality product. Usually, they could not get this opportunity even if they wanted to. Now that they finally had this opportunity, they naturally would not let it go. Seeing Bloody Rose directly give such benefits, Bailey Hongzhuang was also somewhat speechless. What was the point of using such a way to sell oneself to win? Although Bailey Hongzhuang felt that Bloody Rose was somewhat pitiful, but a pitiful person must have something hateful. All this depravity was her own choice. Even she did not want to save herself. How could others help? Therefore, even the trace of sympathy in her heart was erased. Because there was no need. "Bloody Rose, I'll help you fight. Bloody Rose, I'll do it." A group of men were like hungry wolves, looking at Bloody Rose with green eyes. Obviously, Bloody Rose was a delicious cake in their eyes. After seeing this scene, Bloody Rose, who had been slightly hit, smiled again. At least, in the hearts of these men, her position had not changed. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichun. She did not know whether Di Beichun was really ready to go to the ring or just joking. After all, The person who really wanted to participate in the challenge tournament today was her. However, Di Beichen had shown his thoughts with actions. He would not allow anyone to treat his wife with such an attitude. When a man was needed to appear, he naturally would not let Hong Zhuang deal with it alone. Di Beichen stood on the ring. That noble and handsome face was filled with indifference and indifference. He did not say anything, but there was a terrifying momentum that filled the air. Just like when he appeared, it made people unconsciously panic. However, this sluggishness only lasted for a short period of time. Very quickly, a man took the lead and leaped onto the stage. Youngsters nowadays are getting more and more arrogant. I'll teach you a lesson and let you know that you should keep a low profile when you're young. A 25-year-old man appeared in front of Di Beichen. The man was thin and wretched like a monkey. His gaze towards Di Beichen was filled with malice. As a man himself, he hated arrogant guys like Di Beichen the most. It was as if he was the most powerful person in the world. He liked Bloody Rose for a long time. Although Bloody Rose was passionate, she was neither friendly nor distant to everyone. It was not easy to be with Bloody Rose. However, the man just appeared today, and the Bloody Rose began to take the initiative to throw herself into his arms, which made him very dissatisfied. He wanted to prove to Bloody Rose that the guy in front of her was a good-for-nothing except for his appearance. However, Di Beichen had no intention of responding to the man's words. This kind of guy was not even worthy to talk to him. The referee quickly recorded the identities of the two people, but after hearing the words that Di Beichen whispered in his ear, the referee's expression clearly froze for a moment, revealing shock and astonishment, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Chapter 1055. However, the referee's next words completely stunned everyone. This is a private battle, so no bets are allowed. Now let the battle begin. As soon as his voice fell, the referee walked down the stage, leaving the entire ring to Di Beichen and Di Beichen. Everyone stared at the judge in surprise. They did not understand why the judge would suddenly say something like that. After all, the judges of the Blood-Chi Tower had always been extraordinary existences. They were impervious to everything and had a certain status in the Blood-Ground Abyss. Normally, no one could make a judge do something out of line. However, Di Beichen had only whispered something into the judge's ear, and the judge had made such a decision. It was just too unbelievable. Although most of the time, cultivators who did not know each other would fight in the arena, there would definitely be many people who would settle the grudges between four people. This kind of competition with grudges between four people was usually very interesting to watch, and there had never been a situation where no bets were placed. However, the judge had actually said something like that. It was just too unbelievable. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were also filled with surprise. Although she hadn't stayed in the Bloody Abyss for a long time, according to her understanding during this period of time, such a situation shouldn't have happened. Di Beichen had changed the judge's mind with just a few words. Could it be that Di Beichen had a certain status in the Blood-Chi Tower? Bailey Hongzhuang was rather confused. In fact, it would not have mattered even if she participated in the arena. That way, she could even make a fortune here. There is only one reason why Di Beichen had done this, and that was that he did not want other cultivators to know his name. Why? Could it be Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up? She immediately understood why Di Beichen had done this. Thinking about it, Di Beichen must have shocked everyone when he obtained the Blood-Chi Tower's legacy. His name was like thunder in the Blood-Ground Abyss now. If everyone knew his name now, he was worried that no one in the Blood-Ground Abyss would dare to make a move on her. In this way, her experience here would lose a lot of excitement. After understanding this point, Bailey Hongzhuang was also very impressed with Di Beichen because this man had seen through everything in a short time and even planned everything for her. However, the three beasts did not care about Di Beichen's reason at all. They were completely immersed in their own emotions. Di Beichen's move is different. He can directly break the rules of the Blood-Chi Tower. These cultivators are completely scared. Xiaohei jumped in joy. Every time Di Beichen made a move, it was very happy. It felt very uncomfortable when Bloody Rose was so arrogant before. Now in this situation, they had completely won. That Bloody Rose is also asking for humiliation. Why can't she compare her beauty with anyone else? Yet he wants to compete with Master. Isn't he courting death? Xiaobai was also very proud. What kind of person was Master? Bloody Rose and Master were not at the same level at all. In the face of Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's excited words, Bai Shi just kept nodding in agreement. When it came to eloquence, it could not compare with Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai. Chapter 1056. Bloody Rose's eyes could not help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. Since Bailey Hongzhuang appeared here, she felt uncomfortable all over. Originally, the second floor of the Blood Chi Tower was her world. She had never had a problem driving anyone away. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had become a great variable. The man who suddenly appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang also showed absolute extraordinariness. She had been in the Blood Chi Tower for a long time. Over the years, she had never seen a person like Di Beichun, who could make the referee obey him with only one word. His identity was probably extremely amazing. The Blood Chi Tower had always been a magical place. The Blood Chi Tower had existed in the Bloodland Abyss for so long, and the money it had earned was simply amazing. However, no one knew where the money flowed to. Was it possible that Di Beichun had a connection with the owner of the Blood Chi Tower? Thinking of this possibility, Bloody Rose felt that it was incredible. It was really incredible. However, apart from this, she could not think of any other reason. No matter what the reason was, even if Di Beichun had bribed the referee, Di Beichun could do this, which had proved that Di Beichun was extraordinary. Over the years, it was not that no one had tried to bribe the referee, but no one had been able to do it. In the arena, Di Beichun looked at the man in front of him indifferently. Even though the competition had begun, his leisurely appearance did not seem like he was going to fight at all. Faced with Di Beichun's indifference, the man had been angry. He wanted to teach Di Beichun a good lesson, but he did not expect that Di Beichun would be so arrogant. On the contrary, he did not know what to do. Since you were so arrogant, let's see who's the real deal. The man's eyes were as cold as a viper's. He wished he could kill Di Beichun immediately, because such disregard was a form of humiliation. However, Di Beichun didn't think that way at all. Such an opponent couldn't arouse his interest at all. He was just waiting for the man to attack first. However, the man spoke so much nonsense but didn't make a move, which made him feel a little helpless. Finally, when the man could no longer endure Di Beichun's indifference and contempt, the origin energy in his body instantly surged out. His body moved violently and directly charged towards Di Beichun. He wanted to let Di Beichun know how powerful he was. When the cultivators in the stands saw the man's posture, a hint of surprise appeared in their eyes. They did not expect that this man looked so ordinary, but his strength was not weak. Bloody Rose's eyes also fell on the high platform. Although the man showed good strength, she faintly felt that the man seemed to be no match for Di Beichun at all. Compared with the curious appearance of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang and He Mu looked very indifferent. This was a battle without any suspense at all. If Di Beichun lost, it would be a great miracle. Even though the man had already rushed to Di Beichun's noble and handsome face still did not show any ripples, and he did not even raise his eyes. Naked contempt, without any concealment. Seeing Di Beichun's attitude, the crowd was speechless for a while. Chapter 1057. Everyone looked at Di Beichun with disdain. The bearing that Di Beichun showed before was indeed extraordinary, but at this time, he still only cared about putting on an act. That was too stupid. The man's fist fiercely attacked Di Beichun's neck. From the light of the elemental energy that burst out, everyone had no doubt that once the man's fist landed, Di Beichen's life would not be guaranteed. As his fist got closer and closer to Di Beichen, the man's eyes flashed with excitement. He couldn't wait for Di Beichen to continue being so arrogant and continue to stand in the same place as a target for him to defeat. In this way, his reputation in the Bloodchi Tower would also spread, and Bloody Rose would also become his woman. At the thought of this, the man couldn't help but feel excited. Just when a man was very close to Di Beichen, Di Beichen suddenly made a move. With just a casual finger, Di Beichen pressed against the man's glabella. Then, the whole ring seemed to be stagnant. Everyone saw that the man suddenly stopped moving. His fist was only a few centimeters away from Di Beichen's neck, but the man's fist didn't move forward. What's going on? Is he stupid? As long as his fist moved forward a little, he would have succeeded. Only a few cultivators with good eyesight had a look of disbelief in their eyes. Di Beichen had just casually pointed a finger. They hadn't even seen the fluctuation of elemental energy, but the power of this finger was actually so great. In the next moment, Di Beichen withdrew his finger and looked at the crowd below the ring. Is there anyone else who wants to come up? Everyone was puzzled to see that after Di Beichen left, the man still maintained his previous motionless action. It was really strange. Bang! Suddenly, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. Everyone saw that the man's figure fell straight to the ground, and there was no sound at all. Seeing this scene, everyone present showed a shocked look. Judging from the aura that this man exuded before, this man's strength was not weak. Who would have thought that such a simple finger would instantly kill this man? Then, how strong was Di Beichen? Bloody Rose stared at the tall golden figure on the high platform. Although she was angry, she was more appreciative and admiring. Such a perfect man with looks, temperament, and strength was simply every woman's dream. However, the more outstanding Di Beichen was, the more jealous she was of Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman was actually his wife. She admitted that Di Beichen was extraordinary, but she didn't want to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang was also extraordinary. She knew in her heart that only a woman like Bailey Hongzhuang was truly worthy of Di Beichen, but she just couldn't accept it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, and Di Beichen's figure was reflected in her deep black eyes. She had to admit that this man was really perfect. Especially at the moment when he stood up for her, he shone brightly, and no one could compare with him. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. His wife's expression just now was clearly seen by him. Feeling Di Beichen's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang restrained her expression and just smiled faintly. Who else? Di Beichen asked again. However, everyone looked at the dead man on the stage, and no one had the courage to stand up. Chapter 1058. Bloody Rose glanced at all the men present, but found that everyone was hesitant. Undoubtedly, they were frightened by Di Beichen's strength. None of you dare to go up? Bloody Rose could not hide the anger in her eyes. She looked at all the people present with dissatisfaction. She did not expect these people to be so cowardly. In the face of Bloody Rose's eyes, although some practitioners were very hesitant, they finally chose to give up. Although beautiful women were good, they also needed to be alive to enjoy them. If Di Beichen had just finished the battle with the man, they might still have the courage to stand up. However, Di Beichen's performance just now was really amazing. They didn't know how Di Beichen did it. In the face of such an unbreakable finger, they could only choose to give up. Bailey Hongzhuang's hands were around her chest. Her delicate chin was slightly raised, and her eyes were full of provocation when she looked at Bloody Rose. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's provocation, Bloody Rose's face had turned purple. Previously, she was still clamoring for Bailey Hongzhuang to get out of the Blood Tower. She did not expect that in a short time, it seemed that she and Bailey Hongzhuang's identity had been exchanged. Di Beichen saw that no one dared to come up to challenge again, and then he walked down from the martial arts arena. He did not intend to fight with these people too much. Since these people were so sensible, it saved him a lot of effort. Di Beichen slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His deep and bright eyes were filled with a faint smile. Today, he saw another side of his wife. With Bailey Hongzhuang's character, if it was a normal day, she would not compete with Bloody Rose at all. The reason why she did that just now was probably because of him. At the thought of Bailey Hongzhuang, who was usually indifferent and alienated, becoming a kitten that had been baring its fangs and brandishing its claws for him, the smile in his eyes could not help but deepen. His wife, after all, cared about him very much. Bloody Rose looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan, who were standing together, and the jealousy in her eyes gradually deepened. The appearance of these two people brought her incomparable irony. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Bloody Rose faintly. Even if you are here, so what if there are more men who agree with you? You can't even compare to my husband. As soon as these words came out, Bloody Rose's face suddenly became livid. Bailey Hongzhuang was slapping her in the face. Indeed, she had originally thought that her popularity in the Bloodchi Tower was unparalleled. So many men were willing to give up everything for her. But now, the appearance of Di Beichan actually made these people shrink their heads. So what if she had the adoration of thousands of men? She couldn't compare to the one and only one. After Di Beichan heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he tightened his grip around Bailey Hongzhuang's waist. His wife actually called him husband in front of everyone. Usually, Bailey Hongzhuang had never called him that. There was a trace of joy in his heart. He only felt that when Bailey Hongzhuang said these two words, it was particularly lovely. What are you proud of? Bloody Rose's face was gloomy. Didn't you say that you were very powerful? Don't you rely on men in the end? Bloody Rose's mind was full of thoughts. She was absolutely unwilling to lose to Bailey Hongzhuang like this. Looking at Bloody Rose's hateful appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. In fact, if it were not for Bloody Rose's continuous provocation, she would not bother to pay attention to it. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.